Okay, good evening. We're going to go ahead and start reconvening the meeting of January 10th, 2017. I call the meeting to order. It is now 7:03 on January 19th. Madam Clerk, would you like to roll call?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Trutman?
Here.
Vice Mayor Coviello?
Here.
Commissioner Tudor?
Here.
Commissioner Johnson-Sardella?
Here.
And Commissioner Ross?
Present. Stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There are a few housekeeping matters. I would like to remind the residents that the Commission follows a decorum as stated in the end of every agenda, which is currently on item 17. Last Tuesday, there were some instances in which the audience members were out of order. It states, "No clapping, applauding, heckling, or verbal outbursts in support or in opposition to a speaker or his or her remarks shall be permitted." I request that all members of the audience please adhere to the decorum rules, and thank you for your cooperation. An additional housekeeping item I would like to bring up. I'm sorry that we had to reconvene to finish last week's meeting due to the lengthy variance. I would like to suggest that we move all variance hearings to either the end of regularly scheduled meetings rather than at the beginning of the agenda, and also to consider grouping all variances, losing my place here, all variance hearings for special commission meetings if there are several hearings coming up, especially if they're very complex or administrations can foresee that these hearings will require more time. Scheduling these variances become unfair to the residents in attendance who by and large come to hear village business. To recap, I am suggesting that the variance hearings will be scheduled either at the end of the agenda of a regular commission meeting or at a special meeting, especially if any one variance hearing is anticipated by the administration to be long and or complicated. Do we have a consensus, and are there any commissioners' comments on this? Commissioner Ross, go ahead.
I'd like to take some time to research it and see if that is done in the ordinary course at other cities, because I've never seen that done. Because the variance requires a public hearing, and we do our public hearings at a regular commission meeting, it seems appropriate to have it at that time. I'm not saying, you may be bringing up a very valid and better, an improvement to our process, but I need some time to assimilate and research it and understand the impacts.
Okay. Commissioner Johnson-Sardella?
I think that it's a good point. My only concern, as Commissioner Ross has said, because they have to be public, my concern would be the cost. And I wouldn't want the community to incur any additional costs by making them in separate meetings. So I think if maybe either the village manager or the clerk can get back to us with what the cost would be in doing this, it could very well be a good idea. And I think that if the village clerk makes the decision on whether or not, a variance is not complicated and it can stay in a regular commission meeting, and those that would take a lot of time can be in a specially set meeting. But I just want to make sure that the village doesn't incur additional costs that would outweigh.
My only thought is perhaps keeping it at the same meeting, but like setting a time certain for those items towards the end of the agenda, and so that way we can get as much done as we can get on the regular agenda, and then if we have to stop for the variance, but at least it affords us the opportunity to get most of the stuff done early, and then the folks that are involved in the variance and know that they don't need to show up until that time certain. So I think it kind of works for everyone.
Good idea. Thank you.
I think my thoughts are along the same lines of Vice Mayor Coviello. I think that we should, at this time, keep them at the same commission meeting, just move them to the later portion at a time certain so that the parties know when to arrive here. And then if we need to, then we can always, at that point, recess and then address it.
Okay. So, let's see. Just to recap, instead of a special committee meeting concerned about the cost, the idea would be then to put a variance at a time certain at the meeting, sometime later in the meeting, so we can get the business done. Is there a consensus on that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes. I don't have an issue with it.
Okay, so that's 5. Do we need a motion, or can we just request that be done?
You don't necessarily need a motion if there's consensus. If
Okay.
just with the manager and the clerk will make sure they're put on a time certain.
Okay, so we'll have a time certain towards the end of the meeting.
So I don't know if you're comfortable with giving the time certain now, but 2 hours into the meeting, for example, so we'll probably end up doing, I assume.
About 2 hours into the meeting, that sounds about right. You want to just get a consensus on that? It's 2 hours into the meeting, okay?
We'll try it,
why
right?
don't-
We'll try it. We'll see.
Why don't we leave it up to the manager to kind of coordinate, she'll know the complexity of the issue, so she can advise you on the scheduling of the agenda, and
Okay,
that's my advice.
sounds good. Work?
If I might offer one more comment, in the time that I've been sitting on the commission for going on 7, maybe 8 years now, I think we've had 2 variance requests, so it doesn't come up very often. It just happened to come up.
And we're having another one in February. That's one of the reasons why I brought it up. There was another one being scheduled on February 7th. Okay. And I know for the variance hearing that I had for mine, took it almost a year, so I do understand the need to also be timely for the residents on the hearings. Thank you. Okay. Last reminder, last housekeeping issue has to do with the order of the agenda. As you know, we played a bit of musical numbers to make it easier for you, and those of you who don't have copies, they're up there. There's copies, I believe, over there, which basically changes the number around, tells you which number is which, so you don't have to follow and guess where we are. And rather than recapping those numbers, I'll assume everybody has a copy of that. Okay? All right? And as we go through it, I'll just remind everybody. Okay, public comments. This evening's meeting is reconvened, and thus public comments related to the agenda were already heard on January 10th. However, after speaking to the attorney, unless there are any objections from our commissioners, we will open up the floor for public comments. Is there any objections from the commission?
No?
No.
Okay. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less to ensure everyone has an opportunity to speak. And Madam Clerk, if you please let me know when time has expired. Thank you.
Judy Hamilberg, 1015. It's not?
Push.
Judy Hamilberg, 1015 Northeast 116th Street. We have noticed a major improvement in policing in the last week or so. We have had our chief of police stop when neighbors were standing on the street corner talking, and stopped and joined us and carried on conversations and wanted to know what our concerns are. As a resident here, this is what policing used to be in Biscayne Park. Nick, thank you. I commend you on it. I think we need the police not to be hiding in the department building, but to be out on the street with us and talking to us. And I love it. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy.
Harvey Bill, 450 Northeast 121st Street. Item 13H. My wife was on the committee, I believe Doc was on the committee, the charter committee. The election doesn't start. We don't do anything for the election until the person who's leaving leaves. We don't set how can you set a resolution now when you still have a full commission? The thing that kicks it off is having an empty seat, a vacant seat. And as far as I know, that's what my wife said. I think Doc said the same thing. So it seems, I don't even know how you can address it if it's not until David leaves.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Good evening, Andrew Olis, 11935 Northeast 5th Avenue. Just wanted to bring up about your housekeeping item that you just brought up about the variance process and putting it towards the end. You may want to think about timing it like that. You have to remember the public may want to come in and speak about a variance issue, and to make them wait for 2.5 hours or try and time them to come in later, maybe you may not have the effect that you want, either side, or the neighbors or whatever, to come in to make comment. They may just not even come in because it's so late, because people don't necessarily want to wait through all this, to wait to the very end, and suppose it doesn't even happen at the end. Suppose it gets put off and they waited all that time. Just something you may want to think about. I also want to comment about, the police, noticeable difference. I actually called Nick this week. I avoided speaking to any of the police or having anything to do with the police for the last 3 years because it was obvious why. But Nick is wonderful. It feels the way it used to feel. We feel safe, we feel secure, feels friendly, feels genial the way it was and the way it should always be. Thanks.
Thank you.
Milton Hunter, 646 114th Street. Hello, everyone. Happy New Year for those that I've missed. Also would like to notice some of the changes I've seen in the police department. I actually wrote an email to the manager about just a nice little exchange I had with flashing of the lights and a peace sign from an officer that shall remain nameless because I couldn't see who it was. Anyway, I see Doc is here, but I thought I would steal your thunder on the double telephone poles that we still have throughout the village since 2005. So perhaps this is a year where we can make some progress in getting them removed. I wanted to speak this section more over addressing the audience regarding good and welfare. I wanted to remind for older residents and perhaps mention to newer ones that good and welfare in the past had been removed from commission meetings. So it really should be treated as a right. Let's not abuse it, and let's be respectful of all of our time here. We come here to listen to village business, and certainly this is not the place for extending beyond the limits that we have for the time to speak, which is currently 3 minutes on agenda items. If someone cannot be able to coordinate their thoughts in that time frame, which is possible from time to time, you can certainly write to the commission, and that serves the same goal of being part of a public record, and there is no limit or time constraints on that. So let's try to focus on also current business at hand and not rehash old businesses that's simply unproductive. As far as charter changes, at this time I'm leaning not towards changing the charter, but there needs to be a much better and concerted effort of transparency and communication between the commission and our administration staff. No review committee, past, present, or future, can forecast every possibility with certainty, and no one was prepared for the myriad of problems, some of which we still face from our previous manager. Concerns were not just the mistakes that were made, but also the refusal of the commission to address them in a timely manner once they were made aware. And of course, the definition of insanity is to do the same thing time and time again and expect a different result.
Thank you.
Jeannie Anderson. Want to start it over? Jeannie Anderson, 11th Place and 119th Street. I've got to concur. Nick, awesome. What a huge difference a few weeks have made. And along that vein, I really support the idea of turning the detective position into a full-time patrol person, and adding reserves. It's all about boots on the ground and out in the neighborhood. Charter changes. Well, if you guys remember, the last charter change, which was the one that moved the election, they were not vetted. That was not vetted through any committee. That was not vetted through a workshop. Had resistance from members of the commission as well as the community. But the bottom line was, let the people decide. Those who don't like it, you vote it down. You persuade your neighbors, vote it down. But it should be up to the people, not just 5 of you to decide. I noticed that the landlord permit is on the code report tonight, and that gives me a little bit of concern, as I expressed last week, because last March it was shown that those inspections were not being done. The commission verified they wanted the inspection portion of that ordinance to be followed, even instituted a separate fee. So I'm hoping we'll get an answer tonight as to whether or not they're being done. At the end of last week's meeting, you guys came up with a laundry list of things to try to petition the state for some funding. And you even polled the audience to see what some priorities would be. And as I came away with that, and I think most people came away thinking that there was more or less a consensus that it would be roads, lighting, and working in fixing our existing drainage issues. In reading the document today, it seems very heavily skewed toward floodwater mitigation and moving water into the canal, with minimal attention paid to those other items, and that's not the way people came away understanding it last week, so I hope you guys will revisit that also. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny.
Bob Anderson, 11th Place. I also too want to echo what everybody's been saying about our place. They've been doing an outstanding job. The only thing what I'm asking is maybe slow down on having a replacement chief. Take the time to vet who's out there and make sure it is somebody who fits our community. And as long as we can get some more reserves, I know they're working shorthanded, but there's been such a vast improvement that maybe with some more reserves, it'll give a little breathing room for our interim chief. The other thing is on what was discussed last meeting, on wishes that were going to go to the legislature. Most appropriations from the legislature, almost all of them, are matching funds. And be careful on how much we're asking for when we're coming up with matching funds. Don't deplete the CITT funds completely, because there's other projects that we will need some of that money for.
Thank you, Bob.
Chuck Ross from 1166 Griffin Boulevard. First I want to, I'll jump right in and say, Nick's one of our, was a great choice for interim chief, and I'm very happy that everybody's pleased with him. That's great, because I'm pleased with him, and there is, I think I've seen a difference in what's been going on with the police force as well. So, thank you, Nick. We're going to do a coffee with a cop, try to do it in sometime in early February. I'm going to try to coordinate that with the manager and interim chief, Nick Walschlager. So I'll put out an announcement like I usually do. As far as the proposal to adjust the charter or change the charter, I don't know whether I'm for or against what was proposed, because there needs to be time to understand what you're trying to do, the impact, and it's a little different than when we changed the election. This is a shift in the way the commission and the dynamic between the commission and the manager. So it's not the same thing. There could be a lot of issues, but I would say that we should go through, if that's something that the commission is interested in doing, that we take our time. We have the review by a charter review committee. We vet it with the public and do it properly. Take your time. It's not an emergency, as Fred said. And I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck.
I will address one serious...
I'm sorry, the name and...
Oh, sorry, Judith
name and address.
Hurston, 117th Street. Good evening, all. If I have time, would like to jump in on a couple of other things, but I think this is the most pressing thing that I'm concerned about, and that I think everybody in this room should be concerned about. It's a very serious problem. I'm referring, of course, to item number 13F, discussion on log cabin fire suppression and detection alarm system, status and fire alarm system in the Village Hall, requested by Mayor Trotman. I would like to address my initial comments about the log cabin and then the Village Hall building. There is no fire alarm control panel working. There is one, but it doesn't work. Secondly, there are sensors missing that turn the air conditioning system on and off in the event of a fire. According to Mayor Trotman's report, these components are missing. Third, there is a sprinkler system. However, it is unclear that it is working or even connected to a fire alarm control panel in the building. If the contract documents and the plans and the shop drawings call for and include a fire alarm control panel, then there should be one installed that works. How did the village manager pay for a completed project without a certificate of completion and a final certificate of occupancy? They're very serious questions. I understand that the log cabin was open for business in January of 2016, so it's been in use not just by the village, but it's also been available for rent or for social occasions by residents and non-residents for a full year. I also understand that the contractor is a village resident. I can't imagine that he would ignore this oversight. Surely he would wholeheartedly agree to complete his contractual obligations for the protection of the rest of the residents and the employees who occupy the log cabin, as well as non-residents who will continue to rent it. As far as the village hall is concerned, that's a much more serious issue. There is apparently no smoke detector at all, or detectors, and therefore no fire alarm system. which means in short that should there be a fire, there is no device that exists in the building to notify the fire department in the event of a fire. This is a public building where employees work 5 days a week or more. The public also come and go on a daily basis. Our administrative and police records are housed in that building, and the building has apparently been issued a final certificate of occupancy, and I can't understand how that happened, and how is it possible that the village manager allowed this to happen? It could be argued that such a system is not necessary, but logically and rationally, a de minimis standard is not good enough for a building that the village just built and paid a tremendous sum of money
Ms.
for.
Gerstein, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm done with the 3 minutes. I'm sorry, your time is up.
All right. Please allow me to wrap this up. If I need a smoke detector in my own home, as we all do, why would the village accept a lesser standard, whatever that could be? Do we want to wait until there is a fire to conclude that smoke detectors and a working fire alarm
I'm sorry, Ms.
system
Gerstein, I have to cut you
should
off.
have been installed? Assuming that we have fire insurance, the non-existence of a fire alarm system may well void the insurance coverage.
I'm sorry,
I
Ms.
trust
Gerstein,
this is of grave concern to all of you commissioners and everybody in this room, and I thank you for allowing me to make this comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Nancy Davis, 11927 Northeast 6th Avenue. Hi, Nick. I haven't met you. I live on 6th Avenue. I'm really happy to hear all the good stuff that's going on, but I'm not feeling the love over there where I'm living, and I've been lately feeling like I'm living on a very loud, noisy superhighway. So I just want to ask you to share the love over our way. I live on the north end. One thing I've noticed in over 20 years of living here in the park, that when people are coming in from the south, they slow down because they're coming in, but by the time they get up to where I am, they start speeding up because they know they're almost out. So just share the love with us, okay? Thanks.
Thank you, Nancy. Any other comments?
MacDonald Kennedy, 11705 Northeast 11th Place. Two quick things, excuse me, regarding the potential referendum to change the charter. If you decide to take it to the vote, I think you have a responsibility to ensure that the largest number of people are fully informed about this and turn out to vote. Holding an important referendum at a special election outside of the normal election cycle that we're all used to, it has the appearance of, like, it could feel to some people like a voter suppression on a very big topic because it's just outside of the normal cycle. If you really believe this referendum is the best thing for Biscayne Park, I think it should wait for the next regular election, November of 2018, not this spring. I don't see what the rush is. And the second thing is, if you decide to push it through tonight, this idea of a charter change, please avoid the appearance of impropriety by making the affirmative decision effective with the next duly elected commission, rather than for yourselves. Otherwise, again, there's an appearance of impropriety. It feels like a power grab to me. It really does. You were elected, 3 of you were just recently elected and 2 prior, to fill your roles in an existing power dynamic. And it will change considerably with the change to the charter. You should not benefit from that change, but the next commission certainly could. Thank you.
Thank you, Mac.
Dan Schneider, 11705 Northeast 11th Place. I just want to follow up on what Max said, and just say, I attended the forum for all of the candidates for commission, and I remember you were all asked, what are your top 3 priorities for Biscayne Park? What do you see as the biggest challenges facing Biscayne Park? And none of you mentioned anything about amending the charter. There was no mention of that. I'm just curious to know why that is, if that's your first action that you're taking up as the new commissioners. What I see this as is diminishing the role of the city manager and giving that authority to the commissioners. From looking up here, there's only one person who is a professional city manager, and I think it's important to let her do her job to manage the city. Had any of you said at that meeting or told us at any point that you wanted to change the city charter, you would not have gotten my vote. You absolutely would not have gotten my vote. So I think it's a bad idea. I think it's the wrong thing. If it does happen, I completely agree with Mac that it should happen with the next set of commissioners, not the current sitting group. I don't think it's right that you vote to increase your own authority.
Thank you, Dan. Any other public comments? Okay, we'll close the floor. Public comments? There's one other item that is not on the agenda because we technically closed it, but it came up over the week, so I'd just like to bring it up if it's okay with commissioners, and that's on 12B, the driveway. We talked about waiving the permit fees. If that's okay with everybody?
Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Ross?
I'm sorry. I didn't understand your question.
We're going to look at the permit fees for the driveway.
Add it to the agenda.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it now. Okay. Mr. Tudor?
Yes.
On January 10th, the commission floated the idea of waiving permit renewal fees for those individuals who were given notice of violation on ordinance 21504, the driveway ordinance. For those of you who don't have the agenda from last time, it was item 12B. So the idea was to see who subsequently took out a permit in either, one, let it expire, waiting for the outcome, two, paid a renewal fee. Madam Manager, I had asked in an email early this week that could you confirm that this would affect 23 individuals in total?
I have to pull up the email so that I can refresh my memory.
If you wouldn't mind, thank you, and I'll ask the attorney a question in the meantime. Attorney Hearn, can you please verify that we can waive the fees both now and retroactively?
You're basing on the uniqueness of the situation with this ordinance, and the commission, if that is the will of the commission, can do it. You're waiving the fees proactively at some point here, and retroactively you'll be refunding, actually, is what you're asking.
Correct.
Okay, yeah.
So
That legally can be done with the commission vote, yes.
Okay. And the reason, well, the village manager is looking up the numbers. The reason why this is under consideration is that there was a lot of back and forth on the commission on how to rectify the 2015-04, and then it expired, and then they were in hold, and people were going back and forth. So whether some people were negatively impacted and had to pay either two fees because it expired or a renewal fee. Some people want to wait to find out how we're going to change the legislation, so the idea here is just to make it more revenue neutral so they're not paying twice. And that was my intent. And I'll open it up for discussion. Any commissioners want to comment? Or do you want to wait to see the manager, how many people it's affected?
All right, so I'm going to go,
You there?
I'll just talk loud. Okay, so,
I think so.
following your email, we did an extra search of our records to make sure that the numbers that are provided are more accurate. A total of 198 properties were notified beginning in December 2015 that were identified at that time as being in violation of ordinance 2015-04. Of those 198 properties, 48 of them were for ribbon driveways. Of the 48, 10, there was a ribbon driveway and approach in good condition, ribbon driveway in good condition but no approach, or an approach in bad condition, which were 17 of them, and then 21, a ribbon driveway and approach in bad condition. In addition, the total of number of permits that expired or were active were 16. So we had a total number of 16 permits, 3 expired. 3 of the expired permits showed no activity. The remaining of the 4 needed just a final inspection, meaning that we have permits that are active and 4 of them needing final inspection. And that's the latest update.
Okay, so there's a very small number of individuals this would impact, correct? From what you're saying, it'd be a handful of people.
I don't have a percentage in my head. I could just give you numbers.
So about a handful of
Saying
individuals.
that it's a small percentage is probably...
I didn't mean percent, but a small number of individuals. So it's not a big financial impact either to the village, correct?
I didn't, in terms of waiving the fee, Well, I didn't calculate what we need to raise the fee because I don't know how much each permit cost at the time. So I don't have that number in terms of we are trying to also refund any permit fees that have already been issued. I don't have that number with me.
Would it be better if we table this to the next meeting until we could look into that? Would that be?
Certainly, if I have additional questions from either the community with respect to this item, that would be helpful so that we can make sure to have a more complete answer for you. Those are just the details that we have based on questions that were already posed to staff and being presented to you.
Okay.
I don't know that it requires us to delay this. I mean, it really is an issue of fairness. If permit fees are being incurred because of delay of the village, as I understand it, in resolving this issue, then to me, it's a non-issue. We should waive those permit fees.
Okay. Commissioner Ross?
It was my understanding that what was being considered was the renewal fee, not the permit. No, the permit fee is a fee that everyone pays in order to...
No, just the renewal fee.
Yeah, I was referring to the
That is
renewal.
correct.
Which is a set rate. The renewal is a set $75, I think?
Yes.
That's correct. That was my intention. Mr. Tudor?
I believe that we should go ahead and refund those renewal fees. I mean, the delay has been a result of the commission's working on this driveway ordinance, so I have no problems with that.
I have no issue with it either because it's not something that the residents created on their own, so I think it's fair to
Okay.
have those renewal fees refunded.
Do we have a motion then?
I'd like to make a motion that the renewal fees for any outstanding driveway permits where the property owner comes in to renew in order to wait for the new standard to be set would be waived.
Would that, just as clarification, would that include anybody who has missed that? Or are we going to be able to retroactively go back to those individuals who had to pay that fee already?
And I feel uncomfortable open book retroactive, but I'd be happy to say from January 1st or from the date of the election, November 2016.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
And am I adding the January 1st date on there?
Yes.
And Vice Mayor, second?
Call the vote?
No, all in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 5-0?
Okay, now we're going to go on to new business. This is item 13C, which did not change. The discussion on hiring of reserve police officers as requested by Commissioner Johnson Sardello. We're going to be combining that with 13D, which is discussion on the police department, which is, I requested, which has got very similar topics. It also just adds the section on converting the detective's position to a full-time patrol officer. So we'll start with Commissioner Johnson Sardello.
If I could please interrupt for a point of order. In our agenda, when we have public comment, there's also a section for a response to the public comment. And I know sometimes the public comes and has some questions, and if we don't respond to them, they go home wondering what happened, nobody answered my question. So there were at least two items that sort of we're looking for a response from the attorney, one from the attorney and one from the public official. And I wonder if we can just take care of that sort of housekeeping thing.
Go ahead, and which points are you referring to?
Okay, so there was a speaker that said we don't have to start the election until a person actually leaves the position. And apparently there was some support in the community for that proposition, but I think that that's really a legal decision that has to be made, and I would like to have our attorney's counsel on it.
No problem. The only question I have is why that couldn't be addressed in 13H, since that is when we're picking it up. But if you want to address it now and then again in 13H, it just seems... I was planning on addressing it, but when we get to that item.
Right. But sometimes people go home and they don't stay for the whole thing.
Okay. I'll take that question. Attorney Hearn, I think they're asking regarding a date certain versus the memo that went out for Vice Mayor Coviello. Do you want to address that, please?
Sure. We have normally, and I've been a part of this several times in different commissions for a variety of reasons, sometimes frankly for criminal charges, there's immediate vacancies. We have the luxury of not having an immediate vacancy. Vice Mayor Coviello has informed us that he would serve up to a date, it might have been May 1st, Vice Mayor, I can't remember, but up to a date, but that date was coming. So we can set up an election without having a void, without having four. And for those of you that followed Dania Beach, for those of you who followed Oakland Park, they spent thousands of dollars because they had 2 twos. But yes, under their charter, when there's a vacancy, it's supposed to be done within 45 days, which is impossible now. Can't be done, and no longer than 90 days, or as soon as the supervisor of election allows you to. What's going to happen tonight is if we do pass this ordinance where we set a date, Vice Mayor Coviello is going to have a letter with his resignation effective at midnight the day before the election. We will then have our election without a void. It will be done subsequent to his resignation within 45 days, consistent with our charter. Very clear.
Okay. You had a second question?
The second question had to do with the fire suppression system, and I know there's another piece in the agenda that has
Yes.
a larger discussion of it. I just, want to make sure that our building official, who is going to have some valuable input for it, either will be here or gives us his information.
My understanding is the building official will be here throughout, and I'll ask Ms. Gersten, will you stay for the remainder so you can hear it at that time? Thank you. Then we'll move on. Thank you. Okay, 13C.
Thank you, Mayor Truppen. Good evening, everyone. My request for this discussion item basically arose from the workshop that we all had regarding the police and code. The consensus of the community, which I heard loud and clear, was a desire to have more police visibility. Also, during that same workshop, I believe the village manager had clarified the amount of police that we currently have, which I think the number was reduced down to 7, due to the fact that we had now interim police chief Walschlager moved into that position, so he was out of his patrol position. So I want to have the discussion tonight because I want to make clear or have a clear consensus from the commission that we want to uphold a policy in which we have public safety is paramount and that we have sufficient visibility in our police. I have a rough number here in my agenda item, and that really comes from just doing a calculation of what that number of reserve officers would create as far as additional man-hours. And if you do the numbers, it would basically correlate to 2 additional officers at less of a cost. And so there's actually a financial reason as well. I want to see the community. I heard several people speaking tonight and being happy that the community is basically returned back to what they remember, and that's very uplifting. So I'd like to have a discussion tonight with regard to how do we keep that going, and I think a way is increasing our reserves.
I had a similar section in item 13D, so we're going to address it at the same time, that also looked at the total number of man-hours that it takes to do. It's about 336 man-hours if everybody worked. It's basically 336 minimum to get 2 officers to cover the village. That leaves no vacation time, no anything. So you end up having to find how many more hours do you need. Over the years, I've been here about 20 plus years, I've talked to many different police chiefs and many different officers, and it looks, most people are comfortable between the 20 and 30 range for reserve officers. We've been down to a handful. And that clearly was an administrative decision under the last administration, and it's clearly a problem for, I believe, the residents' safety, as well as the officers' safety, frankly, and as well as pedestrian safety. What I propose is that we'd have at least a minimum of 20 reserve officers, and the intent is that it this would allow us to have 5 more officers than we currently are budgeted for, that we have not hired for yet. And I also wanted to have the sense of urgency that I think it deserves. We need to hire reserve officers, quality reserve officers, but we need to get moving on it because it takes time to do. This will allow for a lot of things that during the community forum that you all asked for, which are things like ticket and click it, more community engagement with the police, and frankly, times where we need a set of many officers to address a problem, whether it's break-in of cars, burglaries, and things like that, we can get more of that. So my idea was very similar, and the idea is to encourage and move us in a discussion of how we can return back to the police force that we all remember and would like to see happen. Open up. Anybody else?
I think it's a good idea and concept, but I'd like to hear from the interim chief just to get his opinion on the pluses and minuses of hiring that many. I have a little bit of a concern of putting some type of quota in, of hiring, 20 extra in a short amount of time. Well, because I know that we've had issues with prior hires of reserve officers. So if we do that, we just have to be certain that they're fully vetted before we hire them to avoid those issues in the future.
I absolutely agree with that. It's something that we've done in the past, and I've spoke to the manager about, and
Hold your mic closer.
sorry,
Thank you.
the manager and I have spoken about already is we are not going to sacrifice quality for just a sheer body, so that's not going to happen anymore. It will take a little bit more time.
And just, can you just speak about the reliability, or I guess the issues that come up with reserve officers? Obviously, this is not their full-time job, and so oftentimes you're at the mercy of their schedule. So how do you coordinate filling shifts with reserve officers when you can't depend on, you don't know when they're going to be available, I guess is the question. Do they typically commit in advance to shifts? Or?
It depends on the type of officers that we hire and what their primary job is, but usually we have a month out. They will tell us, hey, this is going to be my schedule for this month. There are some other emergency operations that they fall into, whether it's corrections or a medical staffing, that will not allow for always being able to account for them, but for the most part, we do.
Okay.
I have a question as well. Do you support the hiring and increasing the reserve officers? And if so, why? And if not, why not?
I do support it as long as it's done correctly and everything is followed.
Thank you. Any other questions for Interim Chief?
I also have a question. A conversation came up with regard to the standard operating procedure, and I just want to know, is that something that also will affect how you would go about hiring reserve officers, and kind of how soon you can have something in place so that that's not a hindrance? Because I wouldn't want public safety to be affected by any delays in doing that.
FDLE sets out a guideline of a minimum standard, and I realize that sounds like a bad term, minimum standard for police officers, but as long as we adhere to that, we will always be okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick question. Have you, we're talking about numbers here, 15, 20 reserve officers. Have you done your own calculation of what type of reserve officer force you'd like to have? Or are you still in the process of evaluating that?
We're still in the process of evaluating it. I mean, I'm always open to other ideas, but as of right now, again, I'm not going to sacrifice number for quality.
Do you have an idea long-term what you'd like to see? Is there like, have you had time, let me refresh it, have you had time to really look at where you'd like to be number-wise long-term?
Between a lot of other things that have been going on, that hasn't primarily been addressed, but long-term, it's something that we would need to discuss to see what everybody would feel comfortable with and what the village can support as far as vehicle-wise and supply-wise.
Thank you.
I have a question, sort of procedural and practice question is, my understanding that one motivation for officers to serve as volunteer reserve officers here or at other municipalities is in order to maintain their certification, FDLE certification, or ability to act as a police officer. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. As soon as you graduate the academy, or if you separate from another department, a 4-year clock starts. If you are not rehired by another police department and attached to them, your certification will lapse. So it is basically, we provide something to them and we keep them active, and they provide a service to us free of charge.
So with that certification, they're able to do off-duty jobs, paid jobs, so long as they meet our obligations, whatever we require them to be.
Correct.
And when they're on that off-duty job, they're wearing a Biscayne Park police
Yes.
uniform? Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the interim chief?
Not question, but just comment.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Definitely, we need to boost our recruiting and hire some additional volunteer police officers, but my concern is to cause a quota or say we need to accelerate the process and set a deadline for a number, because we need to be very careful how these people the applicants are vetted, and we want to make sure that we have people that fit within the profile of our department. As someone down the line mentioned, we have had issues with reserve officers that were hired, and either within a short time it was realized that they were not the right fit for the village, or there were other complications that caused us to sever the relationship immediately. So I want to be careful who, I don't want to short-circuit the process. I don't want to, go through like a confirmation before we have the investigation done. But definitely I agree that it would make a positive impact to us and to the community to boost our reserve numbers. And it's something I've seen in a lot of other cities. El Portal has quite a number of reserve officers as well. So, I think it's doable, but we just have to be careful in our process.
I agree on the quality issue. My concern is that we have for 2 years allowed it to get so far under that we're actually putting officers at risk by not having enough officers to do 2 shifts sometimes. And so my concern is that we make sure we address this quickly, but at the same time, do it in the right way. You don't want to rush either, but I agree, but you can't keep delaying and delaying until a point. We had 15 officers are listed currently on our budget, and yet how many current reserves do we have, interim chief?
I believe 7.
7. So there has to be if we had enough numbers, I don't think I'd be up here, saying let's have more, But I think we're down by over 50%, just by the budget alone. I think we need to, at least as a commission and body, encourage that this process be accelerated, and I don't mean accelerated by skipping steps, but accelerated in terms of priorities. With that, are there any motions?
I would like to make a comment.
Oh, please.
I believe what needs to be communicated is that the department... Are you on? I don't know. You can stand.
There you go.
Appreciate it.
I'm taking.
I think what needs to be communicated is that we've never stopped accepting applications. So we always accept applications. In fact, we have some of our reservists that actually try to recruit at the police academy because they know some of the instructors. The issue is getting the quality, and I believe everybody's saying the same thing. We're not going to sacrifice quality for quantity. For example, one number I do have for you is in 2016, we received 21 applications, and we only found 2 suitable candidates. It's not for lack of continuing to have and encourage people to apply. It's making sure that we have the right people, and even more prudent for us as a result of what's happened in the past in the village. Our biggest liability is a person with a gun and a badge. For a small city, anything that happens out there can be very damaging. So I just wanted to put that emphasis on why policies and procedures are needed. We looked at some of we have policies and procedures. They're from 2009, and our reservation about trying to put that in the hands of a new recruit is that
we haven't had the chance to really look through it and make sure that even those policies and procedures are in there where somebody is going to either be in pursuit or interact with somebody, that it's current or that it doesn't expose us to any liability. So we continue to accept applications. We've continued to try to bring people on board. We're certainly looking for diversity amongst our workforce, and the diversity is also just having not only the diversity I'm speaking of right now is experience versus inexperience, and just making sure that we have the right people on board. And there's some ideas that's been floated around that we need some time to kind of discuss. We've been talking to other agencies, including, can we require that anybody who applies with us, they must have a mandatory 24-hour commitment every month. And that way we have consistency, and that way you know who's in your village, and that way they understand what the commitment is here. Because I've always said, if the recruit or this reservist is deriving a benefit from wearing a badge in our community, we must equally benefit from them. And so if it means making sure that they sign a document that says, I will be here 24 hours every month, and we find the ones that are going to, after the chief looks and finishes analysis, that we realize that there are areas where we don't have proper coverage, whether it's during the day or the evening or in the middle of the night. We make sure that we find the people that can fill those slots. So it's not just a matter of us trying to also get the number up, but making sure that we have the proper coverage 24/7. It's not just when they're available, when they're not on their other job, and making sure that they have the right training. That is crucial here. We cannot afford to have a mistake, essentially. And a big part of us being advantage of us having a city that's quiet, and we don't deal with a lot of other activities and incidences that other cities do. That works against us because we're not always on alert as other cities who are always dealing with some really intense situations out there. And so it all may also require us to talk with other agencies, see if we can have some of the new recruits drive with some of their officers, and coming up with some real innovative ways to make sure that anybody who drives through our village is ready and truly ready to protect and serve. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a comment with that. I hear everything that you're saying, Madam Manager, and I too don't want to sacrifice quality, but I'm wondering if we can operationalize this and help the community understand what the timeline would be, because I understand if there are certain requirements, and maybe the interim chief can help fill in this gap of letting us know, again, mentioning that we have SOPs from 2009, maybe giving us an idea of how long it would take to update those so that you can feel more comfortable to move forward with the process of hiring reserve officers. What I'm trying to do here is to just for us to get a sense of how much it would take, how much time it would take, so that there's a better understanding of what's happening in this area of augmenting our police force so that we can have that visibility that everyone desires.
I think it depends on, right now we are going through our procedures that we have, and we're working with another agency who's state accredited, and we're going through their procedures to see if we can adapt those policies. So we say it's going to take about 2 months for the team to go through that, make sure what fits here, and I'm sure that there will be a legal review that needs to occur as well to ensure whatever's in there aren't any concerns. So that's probably about a 2-month process. We did appoint 2 reservists sometime last year, whether it was October or November, I can't remember. And so those 2 reservists are going through a training with a document that the police department prepared before. And so what they're doing with these two experienced reservists that we have is utilizing that document that they have and using it to either streamline it or tweak it. And so by the time we get to the point of hiring a new reservist, we would have already improved or revised or updated what we have. And so there are some items or activities that are happening concurrently. And then with respect to bringing somebody on board, as I think I've mentioned with many of you on our one-on-ones, that could be a 2-week to a 2-month process. Someone fresh out of the academy, maybe 2 weeks, because this would be their first job. They probably didn't live anywhere else. They didn't work in another department. They don't have any dings or anything like that. But it could also take 2 months because we look at the credit check, we look at their driving record, we look at their polygraph, we look at their psych. And so there are different various steps that we certainly go through, but we could just say it's either a 2-week or a 2-month process. I don't think that anything necessarily can be expedited. I do believe that the police department, as well as myself, understand that this is a priority, but I just want to make sure that we do it right and we do a thorough job as much as we can, and that's what's been happening.
Thank you.
Are there any motions or consensus?
Yeah, I think the consensus, I think everyone agreed that that's the consensus, as a policy to have staff and the administration focus on hiring reserve officers without any type of time period or quota, but that it is a priority, and let the professional manager and the police chief, do their work.
Does everybody agree? All those in favor?
I agree.
Agreed?
Yes.
Yeah.
5-0. Thank you. Okay, next item is within 13D, and that is an agenda item I sponsored. As evidence from the residents' comments during the community forum and input from the voters on November 2016 election, our residents want the police force to return to proactive policing with a very visible and well-staffed department. Residents indicated that our village is too small to warrant a full-time, high-salaried administrative detective's position. Residents clearly expressed an all-hands-on-deck policy requiring that all members of the police department, including the chief and detective, patrol. Residents clearly expressed the need to increase the number of reserve officers back to historically high numbers. I am recommending to the Commission that we first amend the budget to convert the full-time detective administration position back to a full-time patrol officer, which would save approximately $10,000 in salary, which starts the administrative position is at $48,510 and a beginning police officer at $38,000, plus the difference in fringe benefits. This would address the staffing shortage by covering patrol shifts now being covered through the use of overtime. This position will provide 160 hours of additional man-hours per month towards patrolling and significantly reducing overtime expenditures. By converting the position, it will not only have a positive financial impact to the community, but equally as important, also increase community and officer safety. I know there were some comments regarding the fact that we need a full-time detective. We have for years and years and years not had a full-time detective. It's been oftentimes done by reservists or other staff members. It has served us in the past. Ideally, if we had enough money, we'd do all sorts of things, but we don't. And by sacrificing a man on the street, we end up having more crime, in my opinion, because we don't have somebody else out there, or we have to pay overtime to do it. This is something on the campaign, and during the, I believe during the campaign event that I stressed, and I stress again. I think this is critical, I think it is realistic, and I think it's back to agreeing what we need to do financially. Open up the floor for discussion.
I think this is one of those items that actually I think we should talk to the chief about, find out, I mean, one of the things I would like to know is what was the detective's caseload? What was the open and closed status of those cases? So I think this would be one of those things that actually the chief may be able to address, clear it up for us.
As soon as Captain/Detective Pineda was relieved, we took his caseload which I'm not sure of the exact number of cases he had open, but we went ahead and we transferred it to one of the detectives that has been with us for quite a while, Detective Brad Kern. So since that time, he's been following up on everything. I have not been able to get a full printout as far as what he was given and what he's been doing, but as we go forward, it's going to be a weekly thing that he's going to turn into me. This is what we have done over this time. Just unfortunately, it's been so stacked against us that we have not had a chance to get that ball rolling yet.
And the detective who's working the cases is a reserve officer?
He's a reserve officer,
Okay.
and as I've discussed with the manager, we've been kind of working towards an idea of having a detective bureau that's made up strictly of reserve officers. Now, that's not taking away from the ones that we want to hire, it's in addition to, so...
So currently you have coverage for that detective position already with the reserve detective?
By
So you don't-
reserves.
Okay. And with that position, if we were to, I don't know the correct term, if you wanted to say defund that position or remove
Convert
that
it.
full-time detective position and move it to a different item in the police budget, I mean, where would you like to see that money used?
I mean, absolutely, an additional officer could be used, and if there's anything on top of that, I'm a very big proponent of training, so I think that it can be used in that.
Okay. Yeah, that's the only questions I have.
Anybody else?
I'd just like to, since the police department is under the purview of the manager, I'd like to hear from the manager, her opinion on this change.
Certainly I can see, and I agree that officer safety is paramount. I do agree that we need the additional personnel to help fill a couple of voids that we have there. And I'm not sure if, and this is where I'll have to defer to the attorney in terms of the process to either eliminate or defund the position that's already approved in the budget, and the process to do that, because I thought as the budget is approved, those are the appropriations that we must go through with. And so any changes to those appropriations, I think it just probably requires some clarification on how to do that. So I think from procedurally, I just want to make sure that we handle it right. I certainly prefer that we have some analysis on it, and look in other areas as well, but if we need to move forward, we can certainly try to figure out how to do that expeditiously.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
So we have 11 full-time positions in the police department, and we have 2 positions that are vacant currently, and a third that is on suspension or, yeah. So definitely, we have a shortage in man-hours that need to be covered. I don't know, procedurally, amending the budget seems like something that you would have to do through an ordinance and have 2 readings if it's going to be an amendment of the budget. But if it's still within the same department and we're still talking about man-hours that are going to be met, we probably could do it without going through that lengthy process, and we may have a budget amendment anyway sometime March or April to make corrections. They usually come around that time. So I'm in agreement that maybe that we need to start recruiting to fill a position so that it relieves our current officers from all of the added time they have to put in, and I support that. But as far as calling it a budget amendment, I don't know that that's necessary.
For me, the purpose of this was to convert the position so that it would not be administrative. One of the comments, or actually many of the community forum members and throughout my campaigning, the comment was, why don't we have police presence? Part of that is we have one officer who's being investigated, and he's been off for a while, and they're working to resolve that. That brings us down one officer. Interim chief is doing how many jobs? Several. The overtime budget is huge. This is something that we have to realistically look at. There is a cost associated with not doing this. We continue to pay officers up to $46 an hour, time and a half. They're working really long hours. It's not their fault that we don't have enough coverage. This addresses that issue to 120 man-hours. Now, I'm not sure the technical aspects of doing that. My understanding is we could amend the budget without going through that, so I'm going to let the attorney address that for me. Attorney Hearn?
Well, I think the reason why it came as an amendment to the budget is because that's what commissioners have, you have a control over. But with the discussion right now, I think there's an agreement from the chief and from the manager to hire more officers, not necessarily another detective, in which case you simply, the position can be underfilled as an officer. It often happens in cities, and in the end, then you may have some excess that later on can be done as part of an overall budget amendment, and it stays within the department. As far as training, we can get with our finance director as well on how to accomplish that. But if I understood the manager, she's looking to hire patrol officers, not necessarily a detective, and based on what our chief said, those cases are being handled. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're shaking yes. So in that case, it can be proceeded with underfilling the budgeted position and handling it later as we see, as the budget moves forward. Every year you have to amend the budget. So you can see how this falls out. And that's a simpler way of doing it. I understand why it was brought as a budget amendment, because you control the budget. But I think we have an agreement here, so.
Okay, so, did you want anything, Mr. Chair? Okay. Anybody else? Okay. So we can have an agreement then that the current position, which is now a $48,500 position, can be filled by an officer.
Right, can be underfilled for an officer consistent with our
Consistent with our
hiring policies on our
Thank you.
contract. Okay.
Thank
We have a
you.
union contract that dictates the...
Okay. Rather, do we want to do this in a motion as a request? Do we want to do, how do we want to handle consensus? What would you like to do? I'm asking the commission.
I thought I heard from the chief and the manager that they were in agreement to do
They're in
it.
agreement? Okay, so, but I want to make sure the commissioners are also in agreement, so we're all on the same page. So are we all in agreement?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Attorney Hearn, thank you, Village Manager. Okay, the next item is setting policy for the job requirements for Chief of Police. That was also an item that I have. For those of you who are in the audience, up on the dais there, up on the dais here are two of the sheets of paper that are associated with that, so in case you didn't get a chance to pick them up, you're welcome to. I'm going to break this down into kind of two areas. Hiring the Chief of Police is completely in the purview of the Village Manager. This agenda item is to discuss two policy items that need to be discussed together. The first is the impact of traditional leadership and transitional leadership and positive direction of the police department. I think we've heard from a tremendous number of residents that we're all very happy with Interim Chief Walsliger's commitment and just ability to make such rapid changes, so we thank him on that. The second is to address the adopting a uniform and standard requirements for the key positions, and specifically this evening, the Chief of Police. First, I would like to initiate a discussion on slowing down the hiring of the Chief of Police at this juncture. As the manager so passionately stated in last Tuesday's meeting, she wholeheartedly believes that Interim Chief Walschlager is the right person and is doing an outstanding job. I feel that for the sake of stability and continuity, we need to let the Interim Chief work with the Village Manager to transform the department and gain stability. I believe that is what they both are currently doing, and working very hard at that. Having another change in a few months is just very disruptive. Having worked in our community for over 5 years, our community knows and genuinely respects Interim Chief Walschlager. I propose that we give him a minimum of 6 months to function in his new capacity as Interim Chief to help bring the quality, consistency, and stability to the department. Would any of the commissioners like to add your comments, as well as the Village Manager?
I mean, I agree with that, and also I think that mirrors what the residents have been saying. Interim Chief Walschlager, he knows our community, and I think that we need a moment of stability rather than such rapid changes. I think if we see the improvements, let's keep going with that, and create the stability so that when a new chief comes in, or I would hope that even Interim Chief Walschlager might be considered and maybe fill those shoes. But nonetheless, I think that we need stability right now, and also the fact that we also have these SOPs that need to be worked on. That's going to take time. So I think 6 months is fair.
Other comments? Commissioner Ross?
Well, and everything that was just said was not as a backup to our agenda, so coming in today, I had no idea what your plan was going to be, other than the 2 lines on the agenda. So I'm still sort of absorbing what's being said. I have tremendous respect for Chief Walschlager, and obviously, residents are happy with what they've seen in these few days that he's had the reins. I do, however, have some reservation of setting him up to fail, because he's never been in this capacity before. And as outstanding a job as he does do, it's unfair for us to just throw him out there and say sink or swim. And we don't have sort of the support resources to help prop him up in order to make sure he can do the job. So I'm very concerned about doing that. We've done it before with other chiefs, and it worked for a short time, and then it didn't work, and it came back to bite us. I don't want to put someone else in that position again. So that being said, there's already a job posting out there. I imagine, actually, no, I know that the manager has gotten inquiries, if not applications already. I think that we should still go through all of those applications that come in, and where if there's a candidate that seems appropriate for our village to go through the screening process, I think we should let that process develop at a proper pace. I don't think we should put it off. I don't think that we should accelerate it. And I appreciate everything that Chief Walschlager is doing for us, but the agreement that he signed on for was for a period of approximately 90 days. In that time, we could travel both avenues. You know, the manager and the village residents can assess whether they like the improvements, and believe me, I know that there are improvements going on behind the scenes that the residents aren't even aware of, but still keep on with the search.
May I answer some of the statements that you made? The concern is, we have gone through 2 years in which we had a police chief that was relatively absent. I'm not going to get into the details of that this evening. We have had, with all due respect, I believe he's been doing most of the scheduling, most of the things that he's doing, and he's having extra now, but he did a lot of the responsibilities of being chief without support. I think the opposite is true now. I think he has tremendous deal of support. My concern is I'm not discussing whether or not Chief Walschlager becomes the next chief. That's not what I'm discussing. What I'm suggesting is we need to slow down. If we rush, we put it, and I'm going to get to this next, the second part of this, which is the actual job advertisement that went out. If we rush as it's written, and we rush to make a 24th close date on January 24th, and we rush to put people in, we're going to start again. The clock starts again. We're starting to see positive changes. I think, if nothing else, for the police department's sake, we should allow a little bit of time to make the changes stay, stick, and move. The worst thing for a department is constant movement and constant flux. That was addressed during the community forum meeting by the village manager herself. I'm not asking not to hire a chief or for us to hire the chief. This has nothing to do, and let me be very clear, this has nothing to do with the charter amendment. Nothing. This has to do with keeping a stable police force moving in the right direction and not keep having changes every couple of months.
Two statements. One is, I agree with Commissioner Ross. I mean, I know that you did quite a bit of homework and handed us at least 1 or 2 different documents. and it's impossible for us to read through that stuff here on the dais, so that's one thing. The second thing is, I'd like to hear from the manager. Again, the police department's under her purview, so what are your thoughts on delay? And by the way, I agree with what you said about stability. I get that, and I agree with it, but I'd definitely like to hear your thoughts.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I think everybody agrees that for any organization, stability is key to being productive and being progressive. As many of you have mentioned and many of you have heard, I have full faith and confidence in Chief Wolfschlager as interim, and so there's no doubt in that. Just some of the things that come to the top of my mind now that I understand what the item is about, and in the brief moment to come up with a response is, is Chief Wolfschlager during this time period needed to step down from being basically the union steward. So what that means is you have a workforce who's been waiting for their PBA negotiations and their contract stuff to resume, and the reason why it's on hold is because we had the different transitions and shifts that are going. So we need to recognize that we probably have police officers that have been waiting for the commencement and the conclusion of that process. And I'm not able to speak as to whether or not the fact that they're operating under the old contract is good or bad. I really can't speak to that. So certainly we need to think of make that a part of what we're thinking about. The 6 months probation or trial period or time frame was not negotiated in the contract. As I mentioned before, just getting the contract with him, we all sat down at the table, we had some conversations, we met with his PBA representative or legal advisor, so I have a feeling if we are going to make any changes, we need to go to that process as well. And I prefer not, and maybe somebody will, I prefer not to put the chief on the spot and say, hey, do you want to do that, chief? And he hasn't had time to think about what that commitment means, if he's ready for that commitment, as well as, again, and how does that express itself in the agreement. There's no doubt that I believe in speaking with different people from different departments, police departments, as well as the president of the International Association of Police Chiefs, that myself, I've been assured that we would have any support that we need along the way. And I know that Chief Wolfschlager also has that same support because it looks like we know the same people, which is excellent. But I need to address the word rush. This has not been a rush process. I've been looking into this process since I started. I've been talking with other police departments since I started and talking with them to find out what I should be looking at. What does it mean to oversee a police department? What are the qualities to be looking for? What are the values? What are the expectations? What are the concerns or the consequences? So this is not rushed. I spoke with the Florida Police Chief Association, so I have a network of people that I've spoken to get us to a point where I also felt comfortable in publishing the announcement, and people have responded, which also tells me that what has been published, there are individuals out there that are ready to take on this challenge, and they understand the terms that are on there because it came from me working and doing my research with respect to the RFP for the position. So I just want everyone to be mindful that this is not a rush process. I take my time. In fact, I know some people say I might overanalyze the situation. I'm very meticulous. I'm very careful as much as I can be. And I also, I work with many people and talk to many people. So it's not rushed. The March deadline or time frame was in the hopes of, from what I understood, was us trying to get to a point where we can move the department forward, start building from the ground up again because it's been depleted, taking us to the next level, having a professional police chief, someone with a really strong background who's been tried and trued and done everything, someone who has experience and training and can pick up the phone and call just about anybody out there and get what we need and get us an answer. So I just want to just make sure that I express that this is very well thought out. Certainly, if it's the will of the commission, that's what I'm here for, to implement your policy. I appreciate the opportunity to express some of the things that we need to consider in this, but also give me and the chief the opportunity to discuss what has been presented here so that he and I are also on the same page, because ultimately, the police department falls under the manager. Anything happens, it's me that's going to be in the paper. It's somebody who's going to put me on a stand somewhere. So I do take this seriously. It's a very important decision. I'm very excited about the process, whatever process we decide to go through, and I wait for your direction.
Mayor, what I suggest is this entire conversation may be moot if the chief is not interested in serving as the chief or the interim chief for another, for a further period of time. So I suggest we move this to February and give the manager enough time to speak with the chief and then bring it back for the further discussion.
I have no problem with that, so moved. Before we end it, though, I'd like to ask Mr. Tudor, Commissioner Tudor, if you had any comments?
I want to ask the village manager, how much interest have we had in this position? How many applications or resumes have come in?
I'll have to defer to the village clerk. I lost.
To date, 8 applications.
Okay.
Okay, I'll move the item voluntarily to next February 7th commission to take up then, and I'll make sure I'll back up materials in advance so you all have time to read it. I'm sorry, February 8th. Thank you so much. February 8th. Next item is item 13F, which is discussion on the log cabin fire suppression and detection alarm system status and fire alarm system at the Village Hall. Madam Clerk, please reference the link to the 3 backup documents in the minutes. First, I will speak to safety and liability concerns with regards to the log cabin. For those of you who want to know what we're talking about, one of the main features we're talking about, so we're not talking in just words, is that big red box over there. You'll see it's off. That's your fire alarm control panel. Second, I would also like to speak about the fire alarm deficiencies in the new Village Hall. And third, I'll speak about the issues regarding the address and record issues with Miami-Dade Property Appraiser's Office, the Building Department, and our own village records. Regarding the log cabin, on November 12, 2016, the village manager became aware that the fire alarm control panel was not working. We were all here during the stormwater mitigation, and we had a smell, and so I guess that's when we discovered it, the village manager discovered it. It was first mentioned to me that the fire alarm control panel wasn't working on December 12th, and the backup material fully reviews the issues. But in consideration of everybody's time, I will summarize a few key points. I think you've been here for, 2 meetings now? So I'll try and make it faster. The fire alarm control panel never worked since the building opened on January 20th. We paid the contractor, McKenzie, fully, despite only having a temporary certificate of occupancy, which I have copies of if anybody wants to see. These are normally 90 days. There's no certificate of completion of the project, which is usually what happens when you finish work. You do all the inspections, you get a certificate of completion that proves that all the work was there and inspected. I'm concerned that by leaving these matters open and unresolved, it could potentially have negative repercussions to the occupants of the village. Repercussions to the village and to the occupants. I asked for a written response from the village manager December 19th to specific questions on behalf of the village commission and residents and have yet to receive them. I became very concerned, so I reviewed all contract documents myself that were made available and prepared a report, which is in the backup. The report documents all of the fire alarm system components that were on the final contract documents, but were not installed, tested, or inspected. Attorney Hearn, based upon my findings, is there ground to hold the contractor responsible?
We have contracted obligations, and to the extent they have not been fulfilled, we can absolutely pursue those. And we can look, await the direction of the commission as we look into it further, of course, but yes.
Thank you. Madam Manager, you spoke with the contractor on December 28th. Have they agreed to, and I'm going to probably have to repeat this to you twice because I did not get this to you in advance, and that is my apologies for that. Number one, properly rewire and install the Florida alarm control panel. 2, install the 2 AC duct detectors. And before I list all these things, we have had many meetings where these have been discussed. Okay? So number one, properly rewire and install the fire alarm control panel. 2, install the 2 AC duct detectors for here and here that turn the AC off in case of smoke and fire. It doesn't blow and cause more fire or smoke. 3, verify that this fire sprinkler system is working with modifications as indicated on the drawings. They lowered the fire sprinkler system down a bit, and then they put a control switch in to make sure it is tied in with the alarm panel, is my understanding. And make sure that has been installed and inspected and is in working order, properly tied into the alarm panel. And 4, that the village finally obtains a certificate of completion and a certificate, not a temporary, but a permanent certificate of occupancy. Finally, who will oversee that so it's done properly and expeditiously. This has been going on over a year and 9 months since it's been found out that this happened. But I do have documentation, so you know, with emails with village administration. And by the way, be very clear, the village manager didn't oversee any of this. So this is not on her watch. I want to be clear about that. But I do have documents showing that they knew back in February that it wasn't working.
Who's they?
The city manager as well as Christian, which is the public services manager. Okay? This is internal documentation. I'm not looking to go back. I'm looking to go forward. As long as there's no financial outlay for us to deal with preparing it and get it done fast. The building is less, hold on, sorry, I lost my place. Bear with me, guys. In the meantime, what written documentation do we have from the fire marshal that the building is safe to occupy? I know they've been here, but we don't have it in writing. And this concerns me gravely, because without it in writing, there are all sorts of other liability issues and concerns that I have. I'd like to stop and pause and not move on now to Village Hall, because I can continue, but I'd rather pause and ask for the village manager to respond and any support staff that she'd like to have come speak on this. Thank you.
Really, what I have to say is brief, since I was not here, so I do respectfully ask the commission that when you refer to the village manager, make sure to say previous manager, prior manager, so that the community and everyone's clear of the timeline in which all these events have occurred. But certainly, safety is a priority for everyone. And what I can say, what I'd like to add for the record is that the meeting with the building official as well as the fire prevention inspector at this building, even before the newly elected officials were appointed, neither one gave me any indication that the building is unsafe. Neither one of them has given me any reason to feel that the property should not have ever been occupied. In fact, I remember it clearly because I remember asking, do I need to tell my commission now to relocate all events, activities, and meetings somewhere else? So I made sure to ask that very important question at the beginning, and so I just wanted to add that to the record. It's a matter of what's lengthy in this process is pulling together all the documents. And it's unfortunate, I agree, if the documents related to both projects were handled or managed properly, then it would be easier for us to access and put a timeline together and be a little bit more responsive. So the delay I do apologize for in terms of trying to be even more responsive, but at the same time, I like to make sure that when we say that something occurred, that in fact we have the information for that. Tonight, your building official is here. His name is Salanese, as well as one of the representatives from Mackenzie Construction, which is your contractor for the job. So I'm going to turn over the mic to them for them to, since they're the specialists in these areas and they're very much familiar with the project, they will come. I will have the building official, or you want to speak first? I'll need the building official to speak first, and then Mackenzie, please. Thank you.
For the record, I sent emails asking specific questions, did not get responses to my emails. Is the reason why I became concerned. I want to clarify something, and that is why I ended up spending my lovely holiday going through drawing after drawing, contract drawings, to make sure that this was documented, and that's what's in the report. There's over 60 pictures on the plans, on the contract documents that address this. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sal Anisi. First, I'd like to really thank the new mayor for bringing this item, this issue to our attention, and also for the new city manager trying to push this thing to a conclusion. And I read some previous emails that transpired.
Oh, did?
From the fire alarm company to the previous city manager and the and the service manager for that company, and it looks like it just never got completed. It was to a point where they just had a few more items to finish, okay? And I understand you're correct. There are two called duct detectors.
AC duct detectors.
Right. The AC duct detectors. They call for them, and it seems like they're not here. Okay, and that's very important. So.
Sal, can you just speak? I'm sorry. I look around and I see a lot of fire apparatus. So can you just kind of tell me what's... I'm sorry?
Go ahead.
So what's here, what's not here? Is what's here working? If there's a fire, do alarms go off? Is there I see smoke detectors.
Right.
Can you just sort of walk through that?
Okay. The smoke detectors probably would go off, but it's not going to be monitored because the brains of the system is right at the front door. So you're not going to get a response. As far as the sprinklers, they're working. And they've been working even before this building was renovated. So, in fact, that same unit was working. It was just relocated. It was located on this door. Excuse me. Okay. So it did work. And what happened, and he could probably tell you also, when they first started the construction, all the equipment was taken out and it was given to Empire for safekeeping. So, and then once everything was completed, they brought it back in, and the electrical contractor reinstalled it. Okay, it just never got to the point where it was able to be functioning.
But how does, I mean, typically in any construction projects in Dade County, for cities that do not have fire departments, the county is fire jurisdiction. So the county conducts inspections prior to permit sign-offs, CCs, COs, et cetera. So was that?
Yeah, in this case, as far as the fire alarm system, that is, it's monitored, of course. They would, let me see, let me get my thoughts here, because...
If you'll please wait. Thank you for one moment. Thank you. Just to be clear, and we do have somebody here also who can help if we need it. They did, what's most disturbing to me is where emails back and forth where permits were not required. If you don't have a permit, you don't have inspection. Now, this was, and I want to be fair to Mackenzie, who did a phenomenal job, doing an amazing job in this building, so I don't want this to be put on them. There definitely was a lack of oversight in project management when it came to even internally in our own village. When you take out and relocate a fire alarm control panel from one end of the building over here to another end and you rewire it, the issue of whether a permit is required, had there been a permit, one would have been looking for an inspection. But if no permit is taken out, I'm sure you all would be thrilled at this if I did this at my house. That's where, in my opinion, it got dropped.
Is
Is that accurate?
Yeah, and I'll just expound a little bit on that. From what I understand, the architect spoke to the fire department, and they told them what was here. Originally, everything was in place. They took out all the partitions, and he said since that was the case, that they didn't need to do anything.
And that disturbs me.
That's the problem. That's where the ball gets
And that disturbs me for a multitude of reasons, because it was inaccurate. When you take an alarm panel out and you rewire the whole system, it should have had a permit. And I think that's ultimately where where people who didn't have a background were making decisions, and advice that was given, I don't think was accurate. And that's not Mackenzie's issue per se, okay, in some instances. But moving forward for a moment, and fast forwarding to now, we are sitting a year later on a temporary occupating certificate, and we still have certificate of completions, and I went through the permits, and with all respect for the new village manager who's walked into this, the records are very problematic. What my aim was, and you can speak to this, is why we were on a temporary CO and then nothing happened for almost a year. That's disturbing to me. Why we never, because if you stay on a temporary CO when you don't have a certificate of completion, nobody checks to make sure the work is done. Anybody want to address that?
No, you're correct.
Okay. Moving forward, because all the contract documents show that we were to have, and this is where you're welcome to answer, 2 AC duct detectors, which, am I correct, Mr. Edmund, that we can have those put in after the fact? Yes. 2 AC duct detectors. The smoke detectors are all correct, by the way, that in terms of that. Although I did see something about CO2, which I'll talk to you about later, that I saw in a piece of paper. We'll better talk about that later. But we do have the smoke detectors installed. The fire alarm control panel, when we finally turned it on, it said battery. So somebody either disconnected a battery, which they do sometimes when you have an alarm. So it could have been alarming with an error message, and that could be why they turned it off. And that's usually done when they're working on it, not when the building has a CO. So this is what we found. And what I'm looking for now is correction and making sure of a couple of things. And there's one clarification I need to ask you. I know you said the sprinklers are working. I didn't find a single piece of paper when I went through all the permits that showed anybody inspected that. So you may have it, and I may not have found it because I may have been missing folders. I'm not sure. But I just want to make sure we have documentation showing that that works.
There is a final for that.
There's a final on that? Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just couldn't find the papers. It didn't mean
Yeah,
there
it's
it
there.
is. Okay.
If I can explain a little bit?
Yes.
In regards to the AC duct smoke detectors, to be sincere, that's new. If it's on the drawings and it was missed, that's totally haven't been brought up.
Excuse me,
by
Hector,
anybody.
could you
I'm sorry,
identify yourself?
Name.
Hector Gonzalez, project manager with Mackenzie Construction. I came along halfway through the project and took over. So I'm obviously half responsible for everything that's going on right now here. So in regards to the AC duct detectors, I would have to go back and see if that's obviously there, then obviously it needs to be required. Obviously, depending on the building, some would require, some would not. It's just based on the design that went through the city approval and all that process. So if it's old, obviously it's going to get installed. I'm not sure right now. In regards to what happened, as he explained, and this is basically what the design team brought up in the contract documents from day one, we were hired to put back everything as per their drawings, and then the village was supposed to hire their own monitoring company to come back and just really program the panel and leave it functional. So in terms of our scope of work that we had on our contract, it was basically to put everything back in place and leave it for the village to actually program it and leave it functional. So at least from our end, we were under the impression that we were done. Nobody ever reached out to us telling us, hey, by the way, either you have something that is not correct, come back and fix it so this can be functional, or no, we need your help to make this functional because it's not working. We left it as it was completed, and obviously we didn't just wait a year and just to find out now that this is happening. It's like we were never told that there was an issue at all with the panel until, I guess, a month ago when I got a call.
Some things, it doesn't make sense. I understand what you're saying, but again, the county, the city inspects plumbing, electrical, et cetera. The county is going to inspect two things, fire and DERM. So septic goes with DERM. The fire department, did they come and inspect this building as part of the overall permitting?
They came, they inspected the building, more specifically for a fire sprinkler system.
Okay, and they didn't at all inspect the fire?
In regards to the fire alarm, and this is just based on what the design team is basing their opinion, or I guess what they got feedback on, because I know there's correspondence that they said that they talked to the fire department, and I guess you can call it grandfather, and as Sal explained, since originally you had plenty of partitions and everything was knocked down, then basically he says, okay, it's an open space now, you're just relocating the panel, you don't really need to go through the permit process. That's how it was explained by the design team.
But I'm sorry, go ahead.
And I do agree with what you're saying. I totally agree, and that was, now that we've been coming back, I said, yes, you should come back and you should get a permit so you have everything in writing and there's no if or but.
But the so Miami-Dade County Fire inspected this building, and you're telling me that as part of their inspections, they do not check to see whether that panel is connected or working?
It's two different permits, or it's two different inspections. So the one inspection was for the sprinkler system. They didn't come here looking specifically at the panel.
And because they didn't take out a permit, nobody looked. That is my assessment at this point. That would have triggered the look.
And by Florida Building Code / Fire Code, that panel is required and needs to be connected.
It's being monitored.
Yeah.
And it was monitored, for a year, and the village manager caught that and is working to refund that money, just for the record. The other, and I've talked to the building inspector about this, the other thing I want to make sure is, even though we have smoke detectors, there's one piece of paper, and I just found this, so this was like yesterday. So I'll make sure you all have that. That has to do with CO2, and I just want to make sure that the smoke detectors are appropriate as well. I just want to know that moving forward, that we can expeditiously, at no cost to the village, and that's what I'm looking for, get it up and working, make sure it's correct, and then we can move forward, and with all the three items we discussed. And this way, moving forward, we're sure of that. And to make sure that whoever oversees it, we have written, paper, stamped, official, you can join in here, fire marshal certification, that we can move on forward from now on.
For the record, and so you understand my correspondence with the village manager, is that we're going to take care of anything, any deficiencies or anything that has to be taken care of in regards to making the system functional. And we are going to pursue permitting, which was not originally what we were at least asked to do under our contract, but we're going to pursue that. There are some costs that are still village-wise, which is just the programming of the panel to the system itself, and whatever our permit fees, which they're all like a couple of $100 typically. Other than that, anything that has to do with the actual devices or smoke duct detectors or anything like that, that obviously we're going to take care of that. The only things that are still under the village, monetary-wise, would be the programming, which was originally under their scope. And I have found after the fact, going back to Empire, who did the programming here, that they found that on that existing panel that was just meant to be kept, that there's a board on it that is no longer functioning, that they're going to have to replace.
Okay, just for the record, for the record, when they took the panel down, it was operational. Empire held on to it, and then they gave it back to them to install. So village manager, I'm sorry, not village manager, village attorney, I'd like to look into see what we can do about that.
Yep, we will.
Okay? Thank you.
First thing is to get everything fixed, and
Let's start
And
with
we'll
getting
take a
everything
look.
fixed and have this done.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it was stored by Empire, to be sincere.
It was.
It was, okay.
That's my understanding, is they picked it up,
Yeah.
and
I'm
is
not
that
sure.
correct?
That's my understanding.
Yeah, that they picked it up, from what I could see in the paperwork, they picked it up, they held on to it, and they brought it back. So therefore, if it's not functional, we need to deal with Empire and whoever the overseer is, and we'll have to deal with the contractual issues. But in the plans, just to be very clear in the contract documents, I want to be very clear, it's relocate and move. I didn't see anything regarding programming. I can understand if there's a programming cost, but in terms of relocating it and moving it, that all the costs, the wiring, and hopefully put that in conduit over there
Okay.
appropriately. He understands.
Yeah, he's going to put it in the conduit.
Okay, that'll be taken care of. And I thank you for coming in here. I know it's not a pleasure to have to walk through this beautiful building and have to stand here and listen to us
No problem.
have this. So thank you for taking care of that. I'm most grateful.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to building number 2, which you're not a part of. Okay. And if there's any comments, please jump in, and I don't want to be the one monopolizing the entire
I
conference.
just have one comment really quickly, and this is probably to the village attorney. Because we don't have a certificate of completion or a COO, a certificate of occupancy, I start to worry about the legal ramifications. Sure. And our insurance coverage for this building. In fact, we have been occupying the building all this time without a COO. So I just want to know whether or not our insurance policy for the building has been reviewed to make sure we're not waiving any coverage or any rights under that policy with the fact that we have been occupying the building without a COO.
we checked with the FMIT. Building is still covered. Have not read the details of that contract candidly. Some of this has been a moving part. We did get a TCO, which by all rights is expired. TCOs expire 30 to 90 days. But the TCO was done by our building official, and under 110 of the building code, in order to do a TCO, the building official has to find that it's safe for occupancy. And he wasn't asked that, but I've asked him several times, and he has that confidence. So what may be best is that you take another look at this, Mr. Nisi. We may need to do another temporary, because otherwise we don't have anything. And then the timing of this, I would hope, would be certainly within a 90-day, but hopefully within a 30-day period. And so I think that's the ramifications. Yeah.
Contractor indicating yes, and we thank you for that.
And so I do think we do need to reissue one.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for coming. Now I'm going to move on to Village Hall, the new building. I also discovered on December 27th, I guess I got curious after working on this building and looking at all the paperwork, that the village does not have a fire alarm system and thus any smoke detectors in the new building. This is my re-engineering life. This is where all of our employees work, and we keep all of our municipal records. I did review the plans and looked at both sides of the building. In case you don't know, there's a firewall that goes in the middle, so it's really two small buildings connected by a firewall and a common roof. I'm not an architect, and I'm not a civil engineer. I say that as I continue. One AC has a shut-off switch if smoke's detected. However, there's no audible alarm or monitoring. Is that correct, Mr. Nisi? Correct. Okay. And that's the one on the village, on the non-police side, on the village administration side. I also reviewed the plans that were provided, but apparently the village manager stated we do not have the final drawings. Once again, this is not under her watch, so I want to be clear on that. The former village manager. Okay. Because we don't have the final drawings, I can't tell you what the contract said. I can tell you we did have a set of drawings, which I looked at, which were not the final drawings. So we're waiting to get the final drawings. Apparently, we've asked the contractor, which is a different contractor, to provide those. I'm just going to finish and then jump in a second.
Mayor.
So which means we have no way of knowing what we agreed upon contractually. However, in the one plan that I saw, smoke detectors were indicated. I did see that smoke detectors were mentioned on this one section of the plan drawing, but the building is less than 1 year old. State grant funds were used, as well as taxpayer dollars, and we do not have a copy of the contract documents. I also looked through some of the permit records, and they're less than desirable. Of interest is that the building was granted a certificate of occupancy license. I've heard a lot of conversation that we do or do not need, which I'll let you address, a smoke detector. Even if we don't need it, it doesn't make sense not to have them. What I'm looking for and hoping for is we don't have to pay for it now. Right now, we have 2 fire extinguishers. That's what we have. If you'll notice in this building, we have pole stations and a lot of fire things. But in that building, and I don't believe it's required, and I'm not sure, and I'll let you talk about this, if somebody's sitting in the front desk, I think there's a loophole that lets you not have pole stations and things. And you're not required to have a sprinkler system. Am I correct on that? Please correct me anytime I say something incorrect.
No, that's correct.
Okay.
There is a pull station outside.
There is a pull station?
Outside, yeah.
Outside? Okay, I didn't see it. I went inside. It seems to me, and I looked at the drawings of the air conditioning, there's no duct detectors there, and there's one...
Just on the...
Just on one side, not on the police side.
Right, not on the police department side. They...
And I'll let you go ahead and enlighten us.
On the police department side, they've got fire dampers, like there's 6 of them, interspersed in different parts of the ductwork. Okay? And what that basically does, if there's any smoke or fire, it shuts them off and isolates it. Okay? But according to Florida Building Code, and it's 902.22, it's not required to have sprinklers or a fire alarm. Right, yeah.
So what we have, I just want to understand what's required by law, out of Florida Building Code, and what deficiencies we have, if any.
Yeah. According to this chapter, there are no deficiencies because of the size of the building and the height of the building, same thing. And the occupant, it's up to 50 occupants, and I don't think we have that many in that building. And so that didn't trigger smoke detectors. I understand residents need them, but commercial, for some reason, they don't require it. And if you do put smoke detectors, you would have to probably, you'd have to monitor it. So you'd have to do a system similar to this, because that's one way of doing it.
So the building was built properly according to code?
Right.
Okay.
And I'll say this again. It may be the minimum that we didn't have to do it. And once again, I'm not going to argue with experts here. My concern is we have an alarm system. Not having smoke detectors where you keep people working there and also having all of our records just makes no common sense to me. And at the cost of that building, we're talking about a minimal cost. And they were listed on the plans.
Were they listed on the plans?
Yes, the smoke detectors were listed on the plan.
Did we contact Benny to be here?
Sal, please respond.
Benny, I talked to Benny, but I guess he didn't come.
Did we ask him to come?
I don't know if anyone asked him. I didn't ask him to come.
Well,
But I did ask him for the plans, and he said that he had given them to the village, his set of plans.
His set of plans, but then he has a copy of a set of plans.
He said he had it, but he...
He doesn't want to give us a
He said
copy.
he had already given them to the
Okay.
village.
So, because of our record keeping at this point, we have no way of knowing for sure whether we ever got a final set of plans or not. If we did, we don't have them now. So we have no way of contractually, well, we don't have a final set of plans. We do have a set of plans, correct?
Yes.
Attorney Hearn, if we have a set of plans, can we contact the architect? Since the architect should also have a set of final plans. It's the architect, correct?
Yeah, there's some fluid information here, but we're entitled to a final set of plans, so. we will go ahead and demand the final set
Okay,
of plans.
so
We
we
can
could-
also ask the architect, but we're certainly entitled
Thank
to
you.
the final set of plans.
So the next step might be to at least begin the conversation with getting a set of final plans, and the mention of the one plan that I found that said smoke detector on it, we may want to look in to see whether or not that's something we can do, because if we paid for, and this is what I don't know, if we paid for a set of drawings for this, which is the largest cost involved, then we can add smoke detectors at a much lower cost, if we choose to do that, and it's a cost on us if it's not been contractually obligated. And that is what I'm suggesting that we do. But that's one person, we have 4 others, so I'd like to hear from everybody on this.
If I may, Mayor, could you just clarify, you said something about what contract were you looking for?
Not the actual contract, but the contract documents, which includes the big plans and any type of shop drawings associated with it, so we could go through them. I did go through the book that you gave me, which was the shop plans.
Okay.
But
I
then
just want to clarify when you said
Right.
you didn't have the contracts, which we do.
No, not the contracts, but the contract documents, which are the large plans.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. I would just like some timeline, some discussion on this briefly to see if everybody agrees that we should have basic smoke detectors, and there may be a way to tie it into the ADT system without having to pay large sums of money. And Village Manager, if you'd be so kind, I know you did some research on the cost of putting them in right now.
I'm not gonna, if I'm not 100% sure, I'm not just gonna throw out a number. From what I understand, in order to do the monitoring would be a system similar to this. And if I remember, the quote that I received from Empire was almost $6,000 or something like that. So without knowing receiving some further guidance in terms of specifically what it is that we would like to have, since I've heard the mention of concern with respect to documents, and in talking with even our Madam Clerk, maybe the monitoring system could just be limited to the documents, and since we have other means of ingress to the facility, so it's certainly going to be a cost. It's just a matter of anything isn't going to be covered under the contract documents, then we would be implementing a new system similar to what you see here, and we're talking about the price range that I just mentioned.
I have a question regarding that. I know ADT does, I think it's 120 volt. I got that correct? Fire smoke detectors. I don't know if I have that correctly, but I know they do a smoke detector, and some of them are even wireless that can be connected to your alarm system. I know I have that in my house. I know it's not commercial, but I would like to look into see that option before we put in a whole nother system at a greater cost, just to see if that's possible.
I believe the village clerk spoke with ADT.
Yes, I reached out to ADT, they're the gentleman that came out to give us the quote on this, and I asked, can we add a smoke alarm in that building and add it to our alarm that we have in that building for security? He says, commercial building, we cannot. You can do that in a residential, but you cannot do that in a commercial. Our only option would be something like this, and he says, based on the size of the building, 10 to 15,000. Again, not doing specific, just based on size of the building.
Okay.
And I have that in an email as well. He wrote that to me.
Okay. I'll ask for a copy of that now. At this point, I think I'd like to table this further until we can find more information and address it perhaps at another meeting. I'm not sure if we're going to address it on the 7th or the following meeting, but I think we do need to look at this, is my opinion, to see if there's any financial option that's viable, that won't cost huge amounts of money, that we can manage to put some smoke detectors in. And I think we have some resources in the village we can also look at to discuss it. Anybody objects to my tabling this for now?
So are you asking staff to inquire and come back to us with what they find on the cost or installation of monitoring?
I'm asking first, yes, but I'm also asking, they think they already have. So I'm asking first to see if we have contract documents that would make us not financially liable. So that's step one, is to see if we can find final plans from the architect and go that route first to see whether or not we're not going to be financially holding to that. If it's already in the plans, then we're not financially responsible. I think that's step one. Any comments from anybody? Clearly, I've lived in this too long. Nope. Okay. So, just to be clear, what I'm asking for is just getting back to us on the documents, and then we'll go from there after that. Thank you all very much. And thank you for the village support for pulling all the documents, for staff doing that. Okay, next is item 13G, discussion amendments to the charter responding to us with the special election timelines. I've done a lot of thinking in this particular item, and with regard to one question that was made had to do with that if they had known that I was going to bring this up, that they wouldn't have voted. I did bring it up, perhaps not exactly in this manner, because it didn't really come up in my mind except for hiring quality and what we were going to do to find the hiring qualities. This is not something that I would have actually thought to brought back this early in the game, but because of the special election costing us $17,000, I think $93, if I'm doing the math correctly, is that about right?
I'm sorry, may you repeat that?
$17,000 and change for the special election with advertising?
15 plus...
16, it's 59 plus 1.5, so it's, yeah, it came about 17.
Plus the advertising.
And that's kind of what prompted me to say, let's see what we can get for something that we're already paying for, other than just a special election. But I've done a lot of thinking. Several residents have asked me, is this a rush? I think the answer is yes and no. I think I see it from the perspective that why rush this? I get that. And I think the part that rang most to me was the issue of special election versus regular and the number of voters that come out. As such, I'm going to change putting this on the special election, but I am going to move forward with putting it on 2 years from now, because that does get everybody out and a chance to vote for it. But let me explain to you what I'm looking to do and why I'm doing it and where the motivation is from. Why do we need this charter amendment? Like the U.S. Constitution, which has 27 amendments, our village had one in its 80-year history, which was the city manager-style government. The residents of this village look to the commission as the responsible and answerable entity that ensures that their taxpayers' dollars are wisely spent. However, this expectation and point of view is far from reality, because the commission does not have the authority to confirm appointments by the village manager. Under section of the charter 3.01C1, the village manager is exclusively responsible for hiring, supervision, and the removal of village employees except for the village attorney. The commission has no power in reviewing the hiring of chief of police, village clerk, or finance director. I'm asking to consider two possible paths. One is that the commission fill these positions solely and minimally and have full ratification of all employees. This is traditionally done in many municipalities, as you see in the backup. I gave several different cities. Some of them say mayor because some of them have a strong mayor and they don't have a village commission. For those of you not familiar with everything, strong mayors basically function like a city manager, except they're usually elected. Okay, so when it says the mayor shall, and often in those instances, there's no city manager. I do not believe we should have a strong mayor position. Let me be clear on that. I believe we should have a city manager. There's no doubt. I think that's a better way to go, and I think everybody agreed to that. But why chief of police? There's been a constant turnover. Several of these village managers' permanent hires have not been suited to our community's needs, and as a result, we have sustained a detrimental level of petty crimes and lack of communication with the residents, both of which has affected our property values and health and safety and welfare of the village. Why finance manager? Our current reserves are historically low, and we had to borrow $350,000 to finance the buildings, and we overspent on the project approximately $160,000, maybe another 10 or 15, depending what happens with the fire alarm system. Purchasing, under the current charter scheme, the position of village manager has the authority to spend our tax dollars with limited oversight within our broad budget allocations, meaning that the commission and the village learn of what the expenditures have and have not been made, for the most part, after the fact, and then as a commission, we are asked to rationalize those expenditures. Example, police overtime, building overages, the recent contract negotiations, and smaller line items under $10,000, which really add up quickly. What we need is to gain oversight, and to do that, we need timely accountability from the finance director to the commission. What we need, in short, is a finance director or manager who is responsive to the inquiries of the commission, directly and frequently, as needed and not filtered through the manager. The village commingles funds, and it's difficult to determine what our true reserves are at any one time. We need checks and balances. Why the clerk? In many municipalities, the clerk is hired directly by the commission and answerable to the commission. In other municipalities, the clerk is hired by the commission and answerable to the manager. For our village, I propose that the clerk be hired by the commission and report to the commission and work collaboratively with the village manager. We are not a big city with big city government. We need our own unique formula. We are a resident-centered community where our neighbors are our government. The commission and village manager do not have support staff. We are each other's support staff. The fire alarm is a great example of that. We don't need to do this today. And so I'm not going to ask for a motion to do this today. What instead I'm going to ask for is that we have a community forum meeting, 2 of them, one of them in which we actually sit down and discuss as a community what we want to see strategically for this village over the next 5 years, where we want to go, where we want to be, and the villagers should decide what we want to see and where we want to go. And then we can back plan from that what the structure of the government looks like in order to get us there. I cannot tell you how many phone calls in the last couple of weeks alone I get asking questions for questions I have to keep saying, I have no idea. I don't know. I can try and find that out. There needs to be more balance. There needs to be more systems of accountability fiscally. We're down almost anywhere from, depending on your budget, you want to look at it, we're down to $500,000 in the reserves or less. These are serious, serious issues. And we as a village has to do it together. So I won't rush it. I listened to what you said. I heard every word that each one of you said, and you're right. Putting it on the next and rushing to put it on will be a problem, I think, for most people because they may not turn out. And that's not appropriate either. And that's the reason why we moved the main election to a November time frame with the moved our elections to the same timeline as the national elections. So for that reason, I'll pull this out for now. But what I'd like to do today is I'd like to schedule a community forum meeting in the next month or so, maybe six weeks, where we can all sit down and discuss this together.
I have no issue with that. I think that the community should be involved. And we have said, I think, all of us up here, that we want to uphold transparency. So the public should be involved. So I think it's a good idea to have a forum to discuss and to get some input from the residents with regard to this. It is their community.
Anybody else?
No, I have no objection to having a forum, but I do agree that this should be an item to put off so that it can be discussed further. And I thank you for agreeing to do that.
Oh, no, it's the right thing to do.
I'm in agreement.
Commissioner Ross?
I prepared a lot of notes for what I thought was going to be a very lengthy discussion.
You can hold off, you'll be doing it later.
And I have no issue, in fact, I welcome having a community discussion about the charter, but you should be aware that according to our code, the way to amend the charter is to go through a charter review advisory board and process. So whatever the community brings to that workshop, maybe it could be synthesized and summarized or recorded so that when we go through the charter review as it's pronounced in our code, that board would have the benefit of the information, as well as they'll have their own hearings and take public comment, just like the last charter review board did. So I just want you to be aware that we can't just have a workshop, take in the comment and say, okay, let's change the charter in these aspects. The law that we have written says we have to go through that process.
We'll further that discussion later, if that's okay. Thank you.
Mayor? Yes. I do want to recognize that I did my homework too, which is all this paperwork that you see right here, right now, so I want to get some recognition for that. appreciate the fact that we'll have some time to talk this out a little bit more so that I can truly understand the direction in which we're going, to be prepared or to be able to provide some information. As you had mentioned in there, if you're looking at the structure, there's the examples that you provided, all are different types of structures, but the one thing that I certainly noticed in each example is that the roles were delineated. Nothing was painted with a broad stroke. They were very precise with what the roles are for the various officers and the positions which in those municipalities. And so that was a great learning experience. Some of them even included a personnel review board, a specific process for charter amendment, a specific process for hearings. So certainly now we have a chance to really delve into some of this and possibly look into some other best practices out there. And my only clarification that I need is your community forum for input in terms of input and what the thoughts are with respect to the organizational structure, or is it a strategic planning session? Because those are two fundamentally different types of processes. So I just wanted clarification on that.
It's a back planning issue. If you know where you're going, you can back plan to how best to get there. So I want to start off with a workshop on where we see the village 5 years from now. I know we did that when Mayor Coviello first came in. He held a strategic planning meeting as mayor. I'd like to do the same thing, except with the community, not just the commissioners. I'd like that to be a community piece. And then secondarily, in the second meeting, what I'd like to then do is look at the charter to see whether or not what we want, and then the governmental structure and laws we have supporting it, whether or not that supports where we have to go. The two go hand in hand to me. They're not separate.
Look forward to discussing it with you one-on-one. It's probably my best comment at the time. Thank you very much.
No problem. The last thing is the resolution. So we're moving on to 13H, which is a resolution of the Village of Commission of Biscayne Park calling for a special election in the village to be held on March 21st for the purpose of submitting to qualified electors of the Village of Biscayne Park the candidates to fill the vacancy created by the resignation of former mayor and current Vice Mayor Coviello, provided for an effective date. I'd like to open up comments to that, and first with the attorney.
Yep, I just want to clarify with the clerk, I believe it's March 28th that it's been moved to?
Correct, because of the delay from last week?
Yes, no, I know, but it was announced the 24th, so it's March 28th is the request.
Yes.
Yep.
I'd like to open the floor for comments. Commissioner Ross?
I'm ready to make a motion.
Discussion first, please. Commissioner Johnson-Sardella?
With the explanation that, that was provided by the village attorney earlier in the conversation, because my only comment was with regard to the timing and not knowing whether or not we had approval of the elector to do it in less than the 45 days. But with the clarification from John, I don't think that I have an issue with how it reads.
Okay. Commissioner Tudor?
No comments. I'm ready to move forward on it.
Vice Mayor Coviello?
No comments.
The only concern I have and the only comment I'll make is having just run election and walked enough so that I finally lost some weight. It takes a long time to walk around this little village. My only concern is that I think the date is a little bit, I'd like to see it move back about another week or two, but that's my only comment. But since everybody else is ready to make a vote, I don't know if we have any support to move that back just a little bit, so that we're within the 45 to 90-day realm. I just think it's fair to the candidates. It takes a lot of work to run an election and a campaign. No support. Okay. We'll call for a vote.
I need a motion. I make a motion that we approve Resolution 2017-2.
Second? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, next we're moving on to There's more. Okay. Next, we move on to 14, which is the request for replacements of item on the next meeting's agenda. In order to streamline the time taken for regular commission meetings and to ensure critical village business is being conducted in a reasonable time, I'm requesting that any presentations other than a brief community recognitions be announced 1 month in advance during this item's name and this agenda, which is called request for placement of items on the next meeting's agenda. In other words, we as a collegial body need to assure that the agenda is not being burdened with items that excessively prolong the meeting. And so what I'm requesting is that we just try and do it a month in advance. I realize that can't always be done, but I just like us as a consensus to try and do that. Are there any objections?
I think it's going to be very difficult to get those things that far in advance. And
I'm not making a mention. What I'm asking is to try so that we don't burden the front part of the meeting with a lot of presentations, not that they're not important, but that we can get to village business as rapidly as we can. I'm just asking for the consideration of trying to do that.
It doesn't seem like it's been an issue, but if that's what you want to do, I'm fine with it.
Okay.
It just doesn't seem like those presentations have significantly delayed meetings. I think it's the discussion up here that's delayed meetings. But
sometimes what comes in as a presentation is, like we've had the fire chief come and give a presentation on the response times, and periodically these things come forward. They're informational for us and for the community. It's not just giving out a certificate, so I mean, it's difficult to say.
I realize, I would just like to try and see if we can try and be as, I realize we're already over longer than I wanted to this evening, but I'd just like to try, if everybody could try and do that, I would be very grateful. Okay? No motion is needed.
Okay.
Thank you. Village manager.
So nobody has anything for the next meeting, just confirming.
I'm sorry, nobody has anything for next morning right now?
Okay.
None at this time.
Thank you.
Village manager report?
Sure, I have several reports that are in the backup. I'll just go through, I just wanted to go ahead and if there's no objections, to move the goal setting and action planning item. Oh, he gets me, it's operator
Error. To move it to next month, the goal set and action planning session, to next month, if I may defer it to that time. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. As well as the construction guidelines.
Okay, so that's 15A1 and 15A4 will be moved to February 8th meeting, correct?
Yes.
Deferred.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The legislative priorities, you have the most recent draft for the one related to public safety, which is for CCTV cameras, to place them in at our public facilities, which we think are high vulnerable areas, and start there and request funding for that through the state and to the Senate and the House. Your second priority had to do with the infrastructure improvements for roadway improvement, lighting, and I think drainage mitigation. Those documents are there before you. The lobbyist would like to be able to have those documents tomorrow. He's been calling me today to ask me when, and I informed him that we will discuss it today, and certainly if there's any comments or any additions that you would like to make to those, to provide them to me, and I'll try to get them as quickly as possible as I can tomorrow. Our state representative, Hardiman, wants to try to meet in the first week of February, so having these items prepared and to be able to discuss it with him and to speak about what the needs are of the village are imminent at this time. So I look to your direction.
I'm going to start because when I received this, I think this was yesterday afternoon, the one, and then this one today.
It might have been, you're absolutely correct. It's our first time dealing with these documents here with staff, so...
No, I'm not...
And we needed some... No, I just wanted to clarify. It's our first time dealing with these documents, trying to figure out how to complete them. calling other people and even having the assistance of a provider to help us even with this, the actual state document for the infrastructure improvements. As you recognize, it includes dollar amounts that none of us would really know and have the technical expertise to be able to come up to arrive at those numbers, but certainly it was an exercise that we needed to go through to get the process moving forward.
For me, and, well, let me wait and ask, but let me defer this to other folks first, and I'll come back to me last. Would anybody like to make a comment on, why don't we start with one at a time? Let's do the one that's doing stormwater first, stormwater master plan.
Yes, Madam Manager, my comment is on the first one here. You just mentioned that, and I think that was the consensus at our last meeting, was dealing with roads, lighting, and our current drainage system. So I'm curious as to why I'm reading here that it's the stormwater master plan is being referred to in here rather than the drainage system.
As I mentioned last time, the state provided us with those funds. It's always kind of like good faith to show that because we've received funding, what is our next step? And the thought process was to incorporate that into the overall request, knowing that really it's the lighting and the roadway improvement that we're looking for. But to omit it, I think, it would not be, I would not recommend it, but certainly you would let me know what you would like to do. But we need to speak of it. I don't think it's a good idea for us to stay silent on the fact that we've moved this far, we've have their money, we have this plan, and it should probably at least shed some light on, or give us a little bit heavier application request for the items that we truly are desiring and looking for.
I spoke to Ms. Caserta this afternoon because I was concerned with the issue of matching funds. When we sat and we did this at the last meeting, there were three main areas. One was definitely public safety, and we were going to envelop lighting into that. And I listened to the tape again just to make sure I didn't mishear anything. And each individual commissioner, I don't want to go over it again, but each commissioner said what they wanted to say, and then we basically voted and made a motion 5-0 for public safety and lighting, and then roads was number 2. Commissioner Ross came back and said, does that mean we're not going to look at stormwater? And then there was a consensus among everybody, and then we agreed to, is that we would look at existing drainage structures improvements on the drainage structures, not on a pipe that goes through 113th and that goes into the outfall and uses a stormwater mitigation. So this has morphed a bit into something that that is not what we agreed on. So I have an issue with that. The other issue I have...
May I respond before you go to the next issue, so that when you get to the next issue, I can respond to that? Otherwise, then there's several issues that you mentioned, and I don't want to miss anything.
Go ahead.
So the reason why the lighting is included in here, again, because the turnaround time on this is short, building it into infrastructure was the best place for it. So not having enough time to get back with each one of you individually, I figured if we're talking about infrastructure, even though yes, it could also fall into the police side, but because it requires construction and numbers and figures that we don't currently have or would have taken us a good bit of time to locate, it was better to wrap all that type of improvements into one and keep the police department separate, so at least the police can get the equipment that they're requesting, and then all this infrastructure type and capital improvement type stuff would move together. Okay. And so that was the thought process behind it.
I don't think my objection is where the lighting is as much as it is the fact that we now have a stormwater master plan that's now we're moving forward with. And what I want a clarification, and the reason I spoke to Mr. Caserta this afternoon, is I want a clarification on the matching fund issue. So I asked the question, I asked kind of a couple questions. One was, if we weren't involved and our opinion didn't matter, and you could tell us what the best thing for us to do is, what would we do? That was the question I asked. And in other words, where are they funding and where does the money come from? They're funding if they're funding anything, and from what I'm hearing, the House is not doing a lot this year. If they're funding anything, it's going to be stormwater mitigation and sewers. Okay? So, but it is matching funds. And the most we're going to get is 75-25 if we get lucky. but most of the plans are 50/50. So my concern moving forward with this, and I understand why you're going this direction, because that's where the money is, and usually when you go for funding, you go for where the money is. That's just how it's normally done. But my concern is we're doing something because the money's there, not because it's going to, A, solve our problem, and B, open up a can of worms of another problem. And I think and I understand by us committing to this doesn't mean we commit to the funding. I understand this is just opening up the door to conversation and then putting it on a legislative agenda. But my bigger concern is this, and I'll start with a simple question. Have we been refunded the $134,000 yet from the state?
We're still working on that. We haven't seen the deposit just yet, so it's in process.
Okay, so I wanted to be clear that we haven't received the money back from the first one. Once again, this was a former administration issue, not current, who's been actively trying to solve it, so thank you. The issue is when you do matching funds and you commit to something, they do it over phases. So they try and get you, that's why the stormwater mitigation plan was apparently broken into phases, so that we could afford it in a phased way. Problem is, we have a $2.7 million budget and a $3 million stormwater mitigation plan that I don't think we're ever going to be funded, even phases, is realistic for us. And I don't want us to bite an apple for which and get all this legislative work done, for which we then can't afford it and are attached to it. That is my concern. Comments?
I can certainly soften any area that you'd like or enhance any area that you'd like. So I'm just waiting for input. Also, what this helps us with is when we're speaking with the lobbyist as well, and he's talking, say, with the county commissioner, or any other officials that may be able to find funding for us, at least we have something written that he can refer to and be able to say he knows what we need and he can advocate for us. So I look at it in that light as well, as a possibility to open up some other doors that we may not recognize that's available to us, and it provides him with kind of like his talking points about the village. Understood.
And so what I personally would like to see is this not reflect the stormwater mitigation plan and a commitment for matching funds, and perhaps even take a smaller ask, which you don't normally do, but in our village, a smaller ask means smaller match. And that would, and if we're going to do something on roads, having drainage systems and those types of things, I believe would be a lower ask. I'm just concerned that we've moved forward on something that the community does not want.
So just for clarification, in speaking with colleagues that are very familiar with the CITT funds, they would cover the roads and the lights.
They would cover all the road, total road resurfacing?
Cover road repair and maintenance, yes.
Road repair and maintenance, correct?
Yes.
Okay. If we leave that portion in and we change it to a different form of removal of standing water, rather than creating a massive project with large budget items, is there any way we could do that? Back to what the community wanted, which was to address the drainage issue. I realize it's not as popular and it may not be funded because we are doing something that's not on their priority list. But I do think stormwater recapture is not is an arguable piece without having to have a discharge to a canal. And I'm hoping that would actually work under the stormwater mitigation, but not necessarily be the same project.
I just want to add for the record, again, I'm just seeking direction from the elected body. In February, you will have a update from the company that is currently identifying all your structures, assessing the condition of each one of those structures, and will also indicate to us what is connected properly and what is not. So we may still want to mention something about mitigation to some extent. Certainly can soften it, but based on what he needs to verify already, looks like there's some connections that probably need to occur. So I just want to make sure that the elected body is aware of some of the preliminary conversations that have been had already, and he will present that next month to you.
Thank you. Comments? Commissioner Ross.
Well, just to start from the beginning, these forms are things that we have never dealt with before, so it's not just this administration dealing with them for the first time. The legislature has decided that they're going to require, certain criteria before it, to be involved in their process going forward. And including someone from the village, the manager, commissioner, mayor, to go and testify when they go to committee hearings with these asks. So, we have to count on that commitment as well if we want to see the process through, despite having Dave Caserta speaking for us in Tallahassee.
Yeah, that's what he said.
So, my concern is that if we don't talk about the stormwater master plan, that we're going to lose their ear. And even though I know the community wants to repair our streets and get lighting, that doesn't get the attention in Tallahassee. They're not going to fund for a lighting project. But we can piggyback that into things that they are going to fund. So that's why I think we have to be careful how we phrase our ask, and make sure that we include Tallahassee's concerns and areas that they want to fund along with ours, and partner them together in order to bring the improvement to the community.
And so
the other thing is that even though we may be asking for a 1.1, and it happened with us and other cities when we did prior storm water mitigation, if you don't use all of that funding, we could still only do a project up to what we're willing to match. Even if they gave us the 1.1, we could say, no, we're only going to go this far, 70% of that. So I wouldn't be too worried about the amount of money necessarily, because if we get it, mazel tov. If not, we'll find a way to work it out.
And what you're saying is the CITT funds, if that's correct, would match and be used against the stormwater funds that they're sending, so we'd be able to use that for roads and lighting. Am I understanding correctly?
Say it again, sorry.
What you're saying is if you leave the stormwater in there, and let's say we decide to put a pipe through 113th Street and put it in a canal, then if they pay for that, what you're saying is we'll get funding then to pay for road resurfacing. We will be able to use the CITT matching funds. My suggestion is not to use all of that, keep some of that behind for stuff that we may need, but to use a majority of it, let's say. I'm thinking out loud here, because I also didn't completely understand this and get a chance to process it. So my understanding is what you're saying is if we use stormwater mitigation and they give it for that because they're giving money away, this is essentially what the question is, and then we use the CITT as matching funds, we essentially get the extra benefit of the stormwater. But then my question is, if we don't do the stormwater, can we still use the CITT funds to be used for roads and lighting?
Yes.
I think the best way to answer the question is, they typically want to see that we have skin in the game. And so this is one way to show that we have some skin in the game, but I can't speak for what we'll get and what we won't get, how it's going to work, because I'll be completely honest, I'm new to this process, as a lot of people are. So this is not all the CITT funds that are there. If we want to reduce it, we want to remove it, we could do anything like that. So just let me know what direction you want to go in, and we could do that.
One more comment is when I did speak to Mr. Caserta, he also suggested that there were county funds that we could possibly piggyback on for roads. So, and I'm looking forward to speaking to him more on that, because I know roads is one of our major issues. I'm going to ask for I don't want to monopolize this because I've talked too much this evening completely. I really appreciate if some other commissioners would kind of jump in here and see what you would like to do with this.
I mean, I understand every year we talk, every year it needs to be money for flooding because that's where the money is. I think you both mentioned that. But I wouldn't give up on lighting or other projects. I mean, many people said that, in fact, many senators and representatives that we met with said when we asked for $1 million to build a new village hall, they said, well, we don't just give money for cities to build buildings. And we ultimately received the money. So I think we need to be persistent, and the key to all this is not this piece of paper that we file with the state. The key is to get somebody up there and Dave Caserta is great, but we need to get a senator or a representative that's really backs this and is persistent and pushes this through, in addition to us advocating for the village. So, I wouldn't give up on the lighting component or other aspects other than the drainage.
Mr. Toots?
Well, when I looked over this request, I did notice that it was very heavy on the flood mitigation aspect, which I know that we had a lot of discussion on, and there didn't seem to be much of an appetite from residents for it. This being a new process, I'm not sure how much we want to push the legislator up in Florida and our lobbyists to push for stormwater mitigation funds, only to turn around and say, well, we're not going to be able to take it because we don't have the matching funds for it. I'd rather focus our energies on lighting, road repairs, and start looking into the possibility of not just relying on a lobbyist, but looking into utilizing a grant writer. I know for lighting, I know Department of Energy has some grant programs out there. I don't know if they're still active, but
It's for parks as well. There's a lot of grants for parks.
I mean, there's other avenues that we should be looking at. I just don't want to go there, because this right here is heavy on the stormwater mitigation, and lighting is only out of this 750,000, lighting's only 150,000 of that. So, I just have real concerns about going there, requesting these funds, knowing that we're not going to have the ability to match.
Any comments?
I agree with that assessment, and also with Vice Mayor Coviello that we shouldn't give up pushing for what we want and what the community has asked for. And I am worried about that. When I read it too, it was very heavy towards the stormwater. So since it's being a new process, I don't know what we have to do to adjust this, but I don't want to be in the position where we've pushed so heavy for the stormwater, and we're not getting the funds that that rightfully, we need to deal with now and what the community has asked for.
I concur. I think we need to not, they may have funds available, they may not, and I think there may be avenues that we don't know that happens in those closed-door sessions that might get us things that we really do need versus things that because we think they're going to fund it. I would like to see the stormwater moved out of this, and I would like to move it back into the things that we discussed, which was roads, drainage, lighting, and other safety issues. And I know you did a lot of work on this with that, and I know the figures took you a long time to do, and I know you have a very quick turnaround time. So I'm not sure how to address that, in that I know you need to get this to Mr. Caserta probably within the next day or so. He told me a day or two, hopefully. Tomorrow. He said maybe a day or two is what I talked to him, so you might get another day out of it. But that's my particular position. So all right, so let me back up. Do we want to make a consensus rather than a recommendation to remove the stormwater out and put other things in that we reflected upon, which is roads, lighting, and drainage?
Let me ask this question before we say to move it out completely, because I'm hearing the statements back and forth about, showing that we have teeth in the game, or, because we asked for this master plan, but because it's so heavy towards the stormwater and the drainage isn't even mentioned, is there a way to adjust this percentage so that we're still pushing forth where we want the funding, which is the roads, the lighting, the drainage, and have the stormwater be underlying that? Because my whole thought with the stormwater was that because of these other things weren't addressed in the village, that I don't know whether or not that plan is the best move in the best direction, because I feel like, if our roads are fixed and our drainage is brought up to par, that we wouldn't have maybe the same issues. So I would strongly, I would really want to fight for the funds for, repairing the roads and the drainage.
And the lighting?
And the lighting, yes, sorry.
We'll see what we can do. But I understand.
Thank you for all your hard work on it.
I can't take all the credit. I've had assistance, but we'll talk about it later.
No, for all those folks involved, thank you. Okay, so for the second one, which we didn't look at, for the village park is seeking financial support to update and implement the use of CCT cameras to promote public safety around the village. And the use of the funds will serve to outfit the Ed Brook Recreation Center, which is responsible for multiple after-school care programs as well as event locations, draw crowds. So basically, this is an issue for $20,000 for an ask for the use of CCTV cameras. Open up for discussion?
I think as written, it's fine. I think we should move forward with this particular item.
Commissioner Ross?
Well, we already do have cameras at the rec center, except they're dated, and they can use some updating. And so, yeah, I think it's important to have that kind of utility at the rec center, maybe at Public Works, here at this location. But I would caution against, and I know I've heard from some residents that don't like the idea of having cameras everywhere they go. So I caution against some more widespread application of it, but certainly at the government sites, yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Tudor?
As it's written, I have no problem with it from a public safety standpoint. It makes sense to me to do this, especially at the rec center, and then eventually if it expands to the buildings, whether log cabin or the village hall. So I have no problems with it as it's written.
I think we can move forward.
Okay. My only issue was there anything we could get in for the police in here?
Say that again, I'm sorry?
Something else we could stick in for the police, any needs that they have in here?
The police?
Any needs that they might have that we can kind of
This
wrap in
is
here?
us working with the police and them reaching out to other
Okay,
agencies
all right,
to help
just
us
wanna make sure
prepare the
there's nothing else that they
documents.
need.
So what we're trying to do, since it's our first time, we're trying not to put a whole lot of stuff on one thing. From talking to not only Caserta, but also the Miami-Dade League of Cities President Suarez. He also recommended just have like a focus point. Don't try to make it too broad, don't ask for too much, and then you could always expand from what you requested before. So that was the train of thought on that.
Okay, great. So move forward with this one. Consensus, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Okay. Move forward on that one. You have recruitment efforts, I think, on here next?
Yes, waiting, I know each of you received kind of like the outline on where we're at with the different positions, and didn't know if there were any specific questions. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and move to the next item. So I'll wait for questions. I know it was just a bulleted list, just to be able to provide you with just a highlight or an outline of where we're at.
Just one moment, I'll get into it. Does anybody have any comments on the positions and any details that were put in the report?
I have no comments.
Mr. Tudor?
No
Commissioner
comments.
Tudor?
No comments.
Thank you for the update.
No comments.
I'm going to have one comment on the police chief's process. And I think I've expressed this to you briefly, though we didn't really have a chance to really sit down in depth. My concern is with the questionnaire process, where they're going to be asked to be given written questions prepared by the residents, then they get to take it home and then bring it back. I guess just my concern is, or my question is, where do you see that in the process of evaluation for effectiveness of choosing a candidate?
So just for the benefit of the community, as part of the process, there will be a questionnaire that goes out to the applicants that the selection committee believes may be suitable. So there isn't an interview just yet. So a set of questions would go out to them, and these questions came from other police departments that have gone through the process. And so what I've asked the elected body was for assistance or community input in terms of the type of questions that you believe would be more appropriate to ask these individuals. And what they would do is, we would send them the questions, they'd fill it in, basically send us a written response, and then the selection committee would just review the responses and see if it touches on some of the key things in terms of, well, I don't know the questions, so I can't even say what it would speak to, but it would speak to the main items on there. But certainly we're looking for keywords like community policing. How would they do that? White glove or concierge policing, what is that? How to demonstrate or quantify reduction of crime, or not just reduction of crime, rather I meant to say prevention of crime, because I believe that's what we're really looking for is prevention of crime. That committee would just get together and we would go through the questions together, and that's what we would use as part of the selection process.
Okay, thank you. And I just had one follow-up question on the Public Works manager.
And I only have one person so far, so if I'm awaiting some additional people, yes, please.
I'm sorry,
But I
so
guess
they did-
next month I'll hear more about this process based on the previous item that we had before on this same recruitment.
Yeah, I did ask, and I was the last, that's why. Okay. Next, Public Works Manager.
I'm sorry? No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just have one question on the Public Works Manager position. I know there was some commentary about the job advertisement not talking about the medians and landscaping, and I just wondered if you could address that, because there was some concerns with some of the residents.
And some of the residents have reached out to me on it, looking for somebody with a diverse background. We have a variety of needs, and this is a person that needs to demonstrate, whoever we meet with, that they can meet the various needs in our community. I do understand that the medians and the green space and our landscaping is very critical. Not only that, but it's one of the key attractiveness to the village that people tend to notice that's unique about us. But at the same time, we have other types of needs in the village. So the person or the applicant needs to demonstrate that they are able to not only just manage and lead a staff, but assist them in grooming them so that they can learn new skills as well, but also deal with the myriad of issues that we deal with from day to day, which isn't just and only, it's in addition to all our green space and greenways.
Thank you. Just one other component of that, which was, and I'd like the former commissioners who were on the budget to just clarify for me, is my understanding, and I wasn't at every budget hearing, but that part of the reason for the Public Works position was to address the medians, and that was the main reason why they brought it rather than a facilities position. So my concern is that they budgeted an item expecting someone who was very good on landscaping and maintenance and medians, and not that there aren't other needs, I think that's a given, but that the focus was on that. So that's my only concern, and I'd rather, if I can, Vice Mayor Coviello and Commissioner Ross address that. For me, clarify for me, as to when the budget hearings happened, was it primarily put in for there to look at the median piece, or was it as a facilities issue? I'm just asking, maybe I'm wrong, so I'd like to clarify that.
I think the idea of the position was truly a Public Works, broad range, broad disciplined person rather than an arborist. You know, certainly somebody that can manage outdoors and indoors. And so I don't know that the focus has to be, do they know how to cut trees, but do they know how to tell the difference? Do they know how to find the resources to get the things done? And do they know how to program and schedule things so that they happen at regular intervals?
Thank you very much.
That's my recollection as well.
Okay. Thank you all very much for that clarification. That's all I had on that. Thank you. The last one was tabled, so now we're on A5, which is the Perez Art Museum.
So this is more an update. You saw in your packet that we are one of the 17 applications that was selected, as well as one of 6 cities that will receive 10 installations of artwork from the Perez Art Museum of Miami. And the group is really excited about it. In fact, your community got together today to meet the people from PAM, as well as identify locations for the 10 installations, to create an experience for the entire community, to also allow people to maybe see things that they didn't realize existed before, or be in parts of the city that they never realized. I think the key emphasis here, it's temporary, it's not permanent. We had at least 5 different residents that got together today. Many of them were here today and tonight, and they've left already, but that's okay. But really energized, really excited about it. The things that we'll be able to do is be able to boast that we were selected. We'll be able to come up with an experience where, whether it's the opening or create a night of flashlights or different types of programs around it. And the museum will also help create brochures so that people who never heard of Biscayne Park will see that there's a village called Biscayne Park with these installations that will be in our village. What they also said that they would have on there would be maybe we can have like a Biscayne Park night where maybe it's free or a significantly discounted price for people to go to the museum. So maybe we can have a Biscayne Park night. So it really opened it up the world of art in a different way for our village. The residents that participated, we drove around with the PAM representatives. They'll be back with us soon. There's another session that we still need to attend. There's the agreement that still needs to be submitted and provided to the attorney to ensure that we're indemnified and there aren't any issues. They did mention restoring any areas in which they would have to dig up to install a piece of work. But this is something that certainly, it's a positive for the village. It's something different, and as you could tell by my expression, it's probably one of the most exciting things I've been working on. So, but I can tell you that your neighbors that I met with today, they were really excited about this. They can't wait for something to happen and for us to have just a different kind of experience in the village. So we're looking forward to it.
Madam Manager, how did this, did we submit an application? How did we get selected?
Yes,
Who initiated this?
Actually, I need to give somebody credit. Brian Andrews mentioned it to me during one of our conversations that this opportunity was available. So I looked it up and asked the Public Art Board if they were interested, and they said yes, and they've actually completed the application, submitted it, and we got selected, which is great. We got lucky. Part of it, what enhanced our application is that one of the members, her boyfriend lives here, so they were already familiar with the village, and I believe someone, you know, Vice Mayor, is also affiliated with the organization. So it's good to know that we have support from other individuals to really have something that could be a partnership with other cities, and maybe something that we can grow from and evolve from as well with other activities that we come up with later on.
Comments, questions?
Just a comment, and you mentioned something that sort of reminded me, because we all have outside jobs, and we all have affiliations with different organizations throughout, and maybe they could be charitable or art affiliations. And so there's a value that each one of us can bring to something like this for the village, just by talking the village up, or talking about those other things that interest us in our lives outside of here. And the fact that Dave was involved with PAM and helped enhance our application, that's such a great positive. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Any other comments? Thank you for your hard work on that. I just had one quick question on it's a technical thing, and I hate to do it since it's such a wonderful opportunity. Just a question on parking and where the placement is, just to be making sure that we perhaps, if we have a night where it's open, we try and make parking someplace where it's...
Well, right now, we're just...
you're still in the planning stages.
Yeah, we're just in the planning stages. So far, I mean, for the most part, we're talking mostly about residents and creating the experience for residents who might be new that haven't seen certain areas or haven't been there, or residents that have been here for a while and might have forgotten. Like some people forgot we had a butterfly park, you know? So that was one of the locations that we're recommending. And some others, that yes, we did recommend Village Hall, the log cabin, maybe somewhere on Griffin. One of the avenues, I'd have to go through the couple of other avenues, two at the rec center. So we look at the sites at the rec center, and so and then what we can always, other people will come to visit. So you're right, it's a matter of maybe in the literature somehow we'll have to mention where not to park.
It's my only concern. All right, thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you.
Trying to think, anything else? I think
Unless
you
you-
had some department updates. Do you want to do that quickly? Do we have a?
Just comments, right?
No, if you want to comment on that, fine. I did want to, I think the only thing left in one of the packet is I just wanted to respond to the landlord permit comment that came up, not last week, but only this week. This was an opportunity to give me a chance to really look at the program, because I just didn't have a chance to do it before until now. So it's another reason why it's on the agenda. And so what I was able to discover through staff is that last year, because there were some discussions in terms of whether we're going to do certain types of inspections, it delayed us and prevented us really from doing any type of inspection or doing any type of notifications like mail-outs for people to register. So what I'd like to be able to bring back before you is not only the letter that will go out to the residents, and maybe you can give me direction now. What I'd like to recommend is that there's a letter that's sent out to the owners of these properties that they need to pay for the permit fee for last year, and then pay for the permit fee for this year, as well as the inspection fee just for this year. So since we didn't conduct an inspection last year, we didn't feel that it was appropriate just to tell them, to charge them for the inspection since we didn't do it. But certainly for this year, for 2017, we can make sure to get the registration fee as well as the inspection fee. And then also a recommendation would also be to add additional fees. For example, do we need to have, like after 2 inspections, do we need to have a reinspection fee? Maybe this is someone that just isn't understanding what they need to do and we should recover the cost of conducting the inspection. Or we've gone through the effort of scheduling the appointment and they're not there, but we've made time in our day to do that. And the consideration that if they don't submit their renewal on time, and is there a fee for that? So you'll see some of that in the next item. But certainly, in the meanwhile, what we can do is if you just provide direction on the letter, so we could at least start working on the letter, try to get the letter out as quickly as possible, and then all the other fee type items I could always work out with you throughout the next coming months.
Do we have a consensus on that?
Definitely.
Yes?
I just want to thank you for these reports. I know amongst everything else that you're doing, you have a lot on your plate, and they're thorough. You and your staff, I assume your staff assisted you with these, but...
It's all my staff.
Yeah, they're very thorough, and thank you. One comment is, I know that they're on the website within the agenda, but maybe perhaps it would be a good idea to have like a link to the manager's reports for the public to, access them easier.
Okay.
Something to think about.
I'll talk to the Madam Clerk about it, because she knows how to do all that magic. Oh.
I just want to thank Maria for being here tonight. I know she would have rather been in bed.
Could I add one comment on that, on the landlord permit issue? Because it was one of the public comments that were addressed earlier in the evening, and at the time that we passed this resolution, and it had been in the works for a while, to renew the landlord permit, or else it was going to sunshine, it was going to just die. So we decided to renew it and added the element of the inspections. Then we realized, well, we need to charge for them. It was sort of a process to develop. And then by the time we approved the ordinance, we didn't have a full-time manager. We didn't have a manager anymore. Maria was trying to fill a third job and trying to get all of these things done. So we were operating as a skeletal crew with 2 amputations. And so I see why the process didn't actually get implemented, although we did pass the ordinance for it, and I appreciate your catching us up on it now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think we already did announcements, correct? Do you want to make more announcements? Go ahead. Announcements, Madam Clerk. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped the attorney. So sorry.
Well, it's late, just very brief, just to piggyback on this legislative talk that we've had. I've gone to 2 legislative briefings last 2 weeks, and not to be the harbinger of bad news, but the consensus from 4 senators and several reps is that there's almost no money up there. They have changed the way senators have an unlimited ability to bring any bill up, but now they have to attend each bill that they've had, so that's going to, instead of their aides, that's going to shrink a lot of that. Just so you know, and we've been fortunate in this village, but it's bigger problems other places, and it's in residential areas, and it could be one here. I'm working and drafting some legislation regarding sober homes that you've all heard about and different issues, but here we seem to be lucky with that. Very unregulated. I think the legislature will do something about regulating them. As it works in other cities, you just find out that they're there. They're sober homes, so they're for people who are recovering, but they're not regulated like ALFs are within 1,000 feet and having to register. And then I've drafted a bill that we're hoping to get Senator Gary Farmer appears interested in, which is there's a nuisance abatement state law. Anytime there's 2 or more arrests in a 6-month period at a home for prostitution, drug activity, or gang activity, and we want to increase that to any violent felony. Just we've had some issues in some other cities, so just letting you know my thoughts on this legislative session as well. But I know it's late, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I missed...
Oh, no problem. No.
Okay.
Just prepare to go silent into the night.
Announcements, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. On Saturday, January 21st, is our Saturday special trash and yard debris pickup. I just want to clarify, because I did get a call from somebody today saying if we do it on Saturday, we don't have one on Monday. No, you have the Saturday one, and then you have your regular Monday pickup. All right, so the Saturday is that extra one that we get. On Saturday, February 4th, is our Arts and Artisans Show at Farmers Market starting at 2 p.m. And Monday, February 6th is the Planning and Zoning Board at 6:30 p.m. And as a reminder, your next regular commission meeting is Wednesday, February 8th at 7 p.m.
Motion to adjourn? Adjourn.
Run like the wind.